So formal. I feel like I always have to wave at everyone. Like when we're in chambers, we say hi.
Well, the good news is, according to the county health department, things are moving in the right direction. So that's good to hear.
Mayor, your head's cut off kind of funny.
Oh, thank you. Well, at this time, it is 7 o'clock. So at this time, we will call to order the January 25th, 2022 City Council Successor Agency meeting. We do have a quorum. Margaret, could I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mendoza?
Here.
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Rary?
Here.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Here.
Mayor Bryant?
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum. This time, if you could join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are reconvening from closed session, and at this time there is nothing to report out from closed session. So at this time I will open public comments, and I'll turn it to you, Margaret.
At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items that are not on the agenda. Items listed under presentations, informational reports, are on the consent calendar. Requests for future agenda items, new requests. Please save your comments for any other items that are on the agenda for that part of the meeting when you'll have the opportunity to provide them. I received no written public comments prior to the meeting. If you wish to speak under public comment, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature and I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. While we encourage your comments, state law prevents the City Council from discussing items that are not on their meeting agenda, and if appropriate, staff will follow up on them. I do have 2 hands raised. I'll start with Carolina Villaseca, followed by Rod. Carolina, go ahead.
Thank you. Happy New Year, City Council. Happy to see all your smiling faces. Couple shout outs and then the concern. So, excuse me. Oh my goodness. Excuse me. Thank you to Aaron Walden and his staff for cleaning up Kings Park and getting the fountains turned on. Boy, the dog owners and the dogs were happy today. Many tail wags and happy slobbery faces. Thank you to the clinic on Sand Creek for their walk-in vaccinations. We couldn't get a timely appointment at any other location. Excuse me. As they were overbooked or their websites weren't working properly to be able to make appointments. The third item is I would like to request that each city council member, the mayor, and anyone listening send in a letter to Caltrans State about State Rep Project 239. Excuse me. To stress the added noise this expansion will have to developments already suffering from noise pollution due to insufficiently tall noise barriers that Caltrans is refusing to fix in Brentwood. Not to mention, it won't solve the traffic issue. Their online open house will be open until February 4th at www.sr239project.net. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rod. Rod, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on item C2, and I'm hoping that we might hear some discussion on it tonight. I know it's on the consent calendar. I want to point out that by the timeline in the agenda packet, it has been just 1 month shy exactly of 2 years since Councilmember Rary first brought this to the City Council. 2 long years. I remember at the time the folks that were trying to get this move forward were optimistic that it could happen so quick that we would save some of the plants, and that ship sailed. So looking at it now, I see there's additional steps to accept the offer of dedication of real property, which I don't know if that offer has been extended, approve the construction contract, and accept the improvements. And I think the people in Deer Ridge would be interested in hearing a little bit of a timeline for that, if there is one, so that we could have an idea of when construction could start on the improvements. Also, as far as the 239 extension, I do agree with previous speaker Carolina that it is important, and I did make a comment on the 239 project at their website, imploring them to take responsibility for the crazy sound wall dip, at least in front of Balfour, where the sound wall just dips down and just exposes the faces of a couple of houses to the full brunt of traffic, which is dead straight across. So I certainly would encourage anybody to make that point with them if they come around and talk to the city about how great 239 extension is going to be. Talk to them first about, well, could they, either do something about that sound wall or do something about the speed limit through town, so people aren't listening to semis going by at 80 decibels. So I think that would be a good thing for the city to pay attention to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we will close public comments. We will move into presentations, and I have made a note of the request of the speakers. So at this time, we have a presentation proclaiming February 2022 as Black History Month. And I'm going to read the presentation, the proclamation now. Whereas we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, and political development through bravery, perseverance, faith, and resolve, often in the face of prejudice and hardship. And whereas their fight for equality, representation, and respect motivates us to continue working for a more promising and peaceful future. And whereas the observance of Black History Month is a call to each and every person to reflect on the contributions of African Americans, to remember the past and learn from it so that we can build a better future for all. Whereas Black History Month is an occasion to rediscover the enduring stories of African Americans and the gifts of freedom, purpose, and opportunity they have bestowed on future generations. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize February 2022 as Black History Month and encourages residents to join us in honoring our diverse heritage and culture and continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all. At this time, I'm not aware of an individual that's going to receive that. We will make sure that it gets to the proper individuals in our community. Also, presentation A2 is Proclamation Proclaiming Health for Humanity Yogathon from January 15th to January 30th, 2022. Is Mr. Deepak Kumar available to receive this, Margaret? Is he with us tonight?
I don't see him on the line. I don't know if he has a representative on his behalf, if they could raise their hand if they were here. I don't see anybody.
Okay, then we'll make sure to mail it to him. And this is the proclamation. Whereas yoga is an ancient Hindu practice developed thousands of years ago in the Indian subcontinent for maintaining spiritual, mental, and physical well-being. And whereas Surya Namaskara, or sun salutation, is a traditional yogic practice combining a sequence of postures with breathing exercises. And whereas Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, or HSS, is a nonprofit charitable organization with over 250 branches in 171 cities and in 34 states, including the 45th chapter in San Francisco Bay Area, through which it conducts a Hindu values education program for Hindu families, as well as community service activities such as food drives, providing hot meals to shelters, and other service activities in several cities across the state of California. And whereas HSS is organizing its annual Health for Humanity Yogathon with the goal of having 20,000 individual participants practice Surya Namaskar to promote the spiritual, mental, and physical well-being of all members of the community. And whereas yoga enthusiasts, yoga studios, local schools, and other community organizations are participating in the HSS Health for Humanity Yogathon, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize HSS for organizing its annual Health for Humanity Yogathon from January 15th to January 30th, 2022, to promote the spiritual, mental, and physical well-being of the community at large, and encourages participation in this health awareness activity. And we will make sure that Mr. Kumar receives a copy of this as well. So at this time, we will move into informational reports, and we'll turn it to Council Member Mendoza.
Thank you. First, we did a proclamation for the passing of Desmond Tutu, and I just want everyone to know Daphne Muse sent a copy of that to Nelson Mandela's widow. So that copy of that got all the way to South Africa, which I thought was really nice of her to send our proclamation out. And then what I've been up to these last couple of weeks, I attended a federal Zoom called Our Homes, a conversation with Erica Pothig, where the federal government is actually looking at doing a federal law that would do away with single family housing. So it's not just a California issue, it's gonna become a national issue. I attended the A3 Community Crisis Initiative. I don't know if you all remember, but we actually voted to support the Miles Hall initiative at the county level for that special phone number where people can call when they're having things that not police need to come to, but someone else. So I attended a call with that. It's starting to roll out in Contra Costa, so it's pretty exciting. Attended the redistricting call. I also attended a meeting with Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks. What does progressive housing policy look like? Again, everyone wants to do away with single family housing, it seems. Attended a call with on global housing issues. There is issues around the world, so defining exactly what's going on and then what can we do to mitigate those issues, such as Airbnbs. You know, I think I mentioned countries have outlawed Airbnbs, vacant properties have to be rented out and things like that. We had a meeting where Congressman John Garamendi presented a meeting with business owners on Brentwood Boulevard who are interested in a food truck night over on Brentwood Boulevard by Azucar. So they want to take that little alleyway and start having food truck night, which is kind of cool because there's not a lot over there. So they thought it would bring in foot traffic that usually doesn't get to that side of town. So it'll be exciting if we can bring that to fruition. Attended the SR 239 meeting as well and expressed my concern with adding more traffic when we haven't even mitigated the traffic that we already have on Highway 4. So they kind of didn't pay attention to us. They were like, that's an old project, this is a new project. But I think if we all keep sending emails in, hopefully we can get somewhere. Attended the Pleasanton City Council meeting where they decided to support getting our Neighborhood Voices initiative on the ballot and letting the voters decide. And attended the Brentwood Union School District meeting where there was a protest that was against a principal, and there's teachers that wanted to thank Brentwood PD for coming out. A lot of them didn't feel safe with the protesters, and they really appreciated Brentwood PD being out there, and they called them out to say thank you for coming out and, you know, taking care of the traffic and making sure the protesters stayed on one side. So that was my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. I also watched the redistricting meeting. Continue to be fascinated by all of those different choices submitted. Different discussions with residents, including topics around homelessness, parks, consent items that they had concern about. I attended a virtual Seroptimist of the Delta meeting to hear an update of resources available to seniors in East County. I attended the Cal Cities new mayors and council members convention just for opening remarks in in my role there as first vice president of mayors and council members. Attended a virtual presentation about accessible transportation. Also attended the Caltrans open house for SR 239 and made several comments, and one of them was sort of read. And I did want to encourage, in fact, Carolina, thank you. I also was going to mention the website again. It's sr239project.net. And comments and feedback are welcome until February 4th. So highly encourage other people to send their remarks in on that as well. And I will be continuing that myself. Took a tour of the CD building for our discussion later on about the youth center, California Alliance of Local Electeds, and discussions about housing and the initiative. Took a tour of the local nonprofit Working Wonders, fairly new site they've moved into. They work with adults with disabilities who have aged out of the regional center programming. And then attended last night a Contra Costa County Elections Community Engagement meeting to prepare for being a part of a panel for a candidate workshop, which is next week, the 2nd, at the Antioch Community Center from 6 to 9. And I've posted on my page a link to that. There's an Eventbrite that's also going to be on the Contra Costa County Elections Facebook page. Since we've got 2 districts that are going to be open, this is a forum for candidates that are interested in learning more about running for office. But a new development I learned about last night was that ballots that are accepted at voting sites are no longer going to be processed at voting sites. And this is an attempt to make the process more transparent, more across the field, just exactly the same for every ballot that comes in. So all of the ballots will be collected at all of these sites and taken to a central location so that every single one of them is processed exactly the same way. It's a unique timing for this to come in, given all the concerns around voter rights. So there was a little bit of pushback, and AACP was there and they were a little bit concerned about that. But it was for the sake of trying to increase the security and the transparency of the process. So we'll just have to watch that one and see how it goes. And thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rary.
Yes. First off, I received a presidential appointment to the Cal Cities Public Safety Policy Committee. This is my 5th year on a Cal Cities Policy Committee. This will be my 4th year on the public safety, and I served 1 year on community services. And this committee looks over all the bills that are coming from our legislature. We determine if we support it, oppose it, support if amended, or oppose. So we help to put our voices out there. Members from across the state participate in this. I attended the Cal Cities Policy Committee orientation, and one exciting update that they announced was that, in December, the California State Parks was awarded $1 billion from the Newsom administration's Outdoors for All initiative. And half of that will go to create local new parks across California, and another $500 million to create or increase access to state parks. So we've got to keep on top of this and apply for grants to bring on our soccer complex, on community centers in other areas of the town. I also attended the Redistricting Commission meeting. I also attended the State Route 239 virtual scoping meeting. And for those of you who are not familiar with what SR 239 is, it is going to go between State Route 4 in Brentwood and out to I-205 in Tracy. It's going to continue down our State Route 4 to where Vasco is. It's going to pass Camino Diablo. It's going to cut over before the Byron Airport, go over to J4, take J4 down, and it's either going to, before it gets to Mountain House, the alternative A will take them out to the 580-205 interchange, or it will continue down JRS Junction 4 out to the Grant Line Road and then connect over there. But it's going to make it so that bicycles and pedestrian and transit type of can be in there. But it is important if you want to participate, as I have all said, by get your comments in by February 4th. And but there is going to have another opportunity within the next few months. They will also be doing a notice, I believe it's called a notice of intention. It's the federal side, and you'll be able to make more comments at that time as well. So we'll keep you updated on that. I toured the CD building as a possible site for the youth center, which we will discuss later in tonight's meeting. I attended the Institute for Local Government, navigating new laws and protocols around public meetings, the Brown Act, and other considerations. After that meeting, I spoke with our city attorney regarding AB 361 teleconference meetings during a state of emergency and whether or not the city is compliant with the terms of the bill. Also, what was rather interesting, like today we jumped off of this meeting to go onto another link in order to do our closed session, where some of the other cities said that when their councils adjourn to a closed meeting, when they're on Zoom, they actually use a breakout room where only the people who are on the council and those who need to attend can go into that breakout room. And that way they don't have to log on to another link. And then once they're off that, get back onto the original link that they were on in the first place. So that's something that we may look into. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes, Mayor. I met with a few residents in regards to a few things here in the city of Brentwood. One of them was the homeless situation. I know that they were doing a cleanup. It was last weekend there by the bus stop right there next to, I think, what is that, Walnut? And spoke with some residents that were out there, but also to our local police department that was out there helping clean up that area. So also participating in visiting the CD building for the possible location for the youth center. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Since the last time we met, I attended the Transplant, BART, State Route 4, and ECRIFA meeting, as well as the Airport Land Use Commission. I also attended the State Route 239 scoping meeting, and our council members have already well described the process. There was an additional piece of information that I would encourage our residents to participate in as well, and that is if you go to the CCTA's home website, they place the information of the individual that is dealing with most of the other affiliated but not under the umbrella of the State 239 concerns, so that we have a direct contact and you have direct access to the person that's responsible to listening. I will say that, and I agree with the other council members, they were there to make a presentation and not really field a lot of the pertinent questions, but they certainly were made aware that there are people here in our community that have a voice and have something that they expect to get the answers for. And so I was appreciative of that as well. I also met with two different groups of individuals wanting to bring businesses into our community. One of them was a resident, and I also was out of state working. Again, I've been working with this group dealing with homeless advocacy and homeless solutions for the state, not necessarily associated with any of the committees that I'm on with the city, but certainly tangential to that. And so there's going to be a lot more movement in that direction at the state level. Our state representatives are all working toward finding some real solutions. And the governor has made this something that he's wanting to focus on as well in this year. So we're going to continue to work to have the best answers we can for our families and our unhoused. And with that, I have nothing to report, more to report. So we will move into the consent calendar. And I'd like to, before I ask for a motion, I'd like to pull consent calendar item C2. And is there anyone with a motion or anyone that would like to pull any more information?
I'd like to pull C1 and C3 as well, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion with the consent calendar?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve, I think, what is it, C4 to C10?
Have a first,
Second.
a second, a roll call vote, please.
I'll read the titles of the ordinances first. C1, an ordinance amending City Council Administrative Policy 10-13, signature authority related to non-development related services under a deposit agreement. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that one? Let's see. No, that was right. Sorry. I had written down the agenda item from last time and then I was sorry. Related services under a deposit agreement, city attorney and director signature authority sections and minor revisions for consistency. Or the next ordinance is ordinance of the City Council repealing Brentwood Municipal Code Chapter 2.20 Planning Commission, adding a new Chapter 2.44 Planning Commission, and repealing resolutions and policies pertaining to Planning Commission. And I'll do the roll call vote. Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay. So we can go in order since item C1 is before C2. Councilmember Mendoza.
Yeah, I just think if Chris and Bruce, sorry to put you guys on the spot, but even based on Carolina's feedback, it's really hard to find vaccinations. So if we could just tell the community like what we're doing and how we're trying to help out as much as we can, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Thanks, Councilmember Mendoza, for pulling this so that we have a moment to talk to the community. Obviously, we've been encouraging everyone to get vaccinated and do testing if you feel like you need to be tested. So what we have been doing behind the scenes is making sure that we are ready to launch if anyone comes to us to ask for a site for either additional testing sites or vaccination sites. So one of the biggest steps forward is that we actually have the insurance on file now for the county, and it's general, so it's not tied to a specific facility. So if the county were to come to us and want any one of our buildings or even parking lots, we've made those work in the past too, we'd be able to make that happen pretty quickly. And in addition, La Clinica reached out. They're working on several dates in February. So once we have their fee waiver in place for that, with their insurance, we will also be able to move pretty rapidly with them on any other future dates. In talking with two reps from the county, they're really happy with the number of vaccination sites, and they base that on how many appointments they see in a day and whether they can kind of manage that caseload. And they think that it's going really well. So that's good news because at one point in time, as I'm sure many people know, there was a shortage of vaccinations. There was a shortage of people to give the vaccinations, but it seems like we've caught up now. So we have the supplies that are needed in the county, and we have the personnel to distribute them. Are there specific questions that I can address, Councilmember Mendoza?
No, I just want to thank you all for the work streamlining it. I know Desiree sent me a note and she really, really appreciates it. So, and Gilbert over at the county, I mean, everyone is so appreciative. So thank you so much. I know it's extra work, but I think it'll pay off in the future.
Absolutely.
Now, Chris, really quick, is there a specific reason why La Clinica wasn't included in this list?
They don't have a site currently in Brentwood. I believe their site is in Oakley. So it was trying to just narrow in on Brentwood specifically. They are looking to, at some point in February, launch some sites in Brentwood, but they're not currently open at this time.
Yeah, because I know La Clinica has been hosting mobile sites, I guess, at different locations. So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Rary.
Yes, Chris, you said that you can do it rather quickly. What is rather quickly? Are we talking days? Are we talking a week? Are we talking hours?
Sure. It depends on you know, if they wanted a certain site that perhaps was booked, you know, something like that could slow us down if we already had something that was in the facility that was their first choice or something like that. But as far as just getting the paperwork through the process, we can do it in less than 48 hours.
Okay, the reason why I ask is my understanding is that when a site fell through with us, I think it was like Clinica, they went to Oakley and were able to do it within hours. So what's the difference between us being up to 48 hours, especially if they have the insurance on hand, versus hours with Oakley?
Sure, and I don't want to say it couldn't happen in hours. It literally just depends who's in the office on that day, who's there to push the paper. If it happened on a Friday, for example, and they needed it that Saturday with staff schedules on Fridays, it might be hard to flip it. But if that happened on like a Tuesday or a day during the week, in most cases, we could have them in on Wednesday and it's not an issue. So I say 48 to give us a buffer depending on holidays and weekends and all of those kind of things. But within hours is probable on most days with staff in the office.
And ES Del Campo, they usually do, they go under the umbrella of the county. So are they on a rider with the county so that they can schedule that?
Correct. And I talked to La Clinica about that as well. Anytime the county comes in, if they have a subcontractor, it's all handled through the county's name, insurance, application, et cetera. So we don't actually need additional information from those subcontractors.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. And I am very glad that this got pulled so we could have a little more robust conversation about this. But my concern is for the residents who are homebound, either by disability or age. And I know there have been some issues in the initial launch of the vaccination process. There was a whole approach specific to homebound residents, but with the boosters, there hasn't been something like that. Have you heard from any of our residents that are homebound, or have you heard from the county how that's being handled in the Brentwood area specifically?
I haven't heard about the boosters specifically. I've had some conversations with county staff about the process in which people can call the county and request a vaccination at their site, but I haven't heard additional information about the boosters specifically. I can certainly ask.
I'm just curious if, like, I know we've got a large population of older adults here, and I don't know how many of them are homebound, but I know that there are other parts of the county where that's been a very significant issue, and a lot of people are afraid to let their home care workers inside and their families inside, and that kind of thing, if they haven't had their boosters. So I just was curious about that, and maybe it's something we might want to just be sure we've got that resource available in case the question comes up. But thank you so much. This has been really helpful information.
Sure, absolutely.
Yes, thank you, Chris and staff, for all your great work. We appreciate it. We'll move on to item C2. And I'm just going to ask staff if you could bring some more clarification as far as the timeline to the question that Mr. Floor had requested during his call.
Yes, good evening, Council. I think we have Joe Borjawalski, our park planner, on the line as well. So Joe, are you able to take these questions? I think you're available. Looks like you may have to unmute yourself.
I think I got it. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. I'll do my best to answer Mr. Floor's questions regarding the timeline. Over the course of the last 2 years, staff has spent hundreds of hours trying to accomplish what is an unprecedented project in the city. It's a very complicated process for the city to sponsor this LLAD formation for this project, and it took quite a while to identify the process and all the steps necessary in the process, and then accomplish those processes there are a lot of steps in the background, a lot of actions that needed to be taken by the council. If you recall, there was a polling process that the council requested, and that took approximately 2 months to complete. And there was also a town hall meeting, as well as all the other processes. So we are at a point right now where we are ready to amend the CIP project for the city council to approve the construction phase of the project. And as soon as that happens, the project can go out to bid for construction. We anticipate that to happen the second week of February. And that will be out on the streets for 30 days while hopefully we'll receive plenty of bids. And then we'll go through the process to award a contract in early to mid-March with a hopeful time to begin construction in April sometime. So the project is moving along. There are a lot of steps. Staff has spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on this, as well as the hours that our consultants have spent on this, in addition to our typical workloads. And we are moving this along as fast as we can inside of the processes that need to happen. I hope that answers the questions.
Thank you. Is there any council member that has questions for Joe at this time? Okay, thank you very much, Joe. We'll move on to item C3, Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
To vote on it?
Mr. Mayor, before you do C3, if you can vote on that item, please.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm getting accustomed back on Zoom. I move that we approve item C2 as presented.
Second.
Okay, first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Rary,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez,
Aye.
Mayor Bryant.
Aye. Okay, now
Motion carries unanimous.
sorry, thank you. Now we'll move on to item C3, Councilmember Mendoza.
So this one I pulled. I did get feedback from residents before even they called me, I looked at the design and I was a little bit taken aback. Our bathrooms are pretty nice, like in all of our parks. Like they're stucco, they have like the little front patio kind of covering. And this one looked like a truck stop bathroom. And I understand that it's more money to stucco it. Like I went on their website and there's options for like the front, you can have a little cover in the front and all these other things. And so that's the first thing. The design is, I'm not happy with that at all. And then the second thing is we have a Park and Rec Commission, and I understand it adds time to the project. But I think that we've interviewed and placed Park and Rec commissioners in place because we've entrusted them with certain tasks. And this is a Park and Rec task. If there was play equipment, they would be reviewing that. And I don't see this as any different than that. So what I'm going to ask for tonight is that we don't vote on it and we send it back to Park and Rec. And if they need an increase in budget, to make it nicer, then come to us with how much that would be, and then we can go from there. I know this was a long time ago. I know construction costs have gotten more expensive. So to me, it wouldn't be out of the, extra to say yes on an increased budget on construction. And I know it's higher than budget, but there's times that we vote for things that are not in the budget ad hoc, like we did for the design, $100,000 for the design of the youth center and the senior center. So things happen out of budget, you just reforecast, and then it becomes, your new number. So I want to pull it. I don't want to vote it. I want to send it to Park and Rec. I want them to review the design, and it needs to be similar to what we're seeing in other places. It needs to be the Brentwood standard, which we have really high standards. So that's my spiel.
Thank you, Councilmember Meyer.
So I would like to know about the Parks and Rec Commission, if there is a design review process, and if there isn't, is it more of a policy or a tradition situation? Before I go on to my next question, I wondered if you could answer that, Bruce.
Yes, so there's not really a design review process for Parks and Recreation. It's not like the Planning Commission has design review. These restrooms, they could have gone through the Park and Rec Commission. This originally was items from the city council level as far as moving these forward. Restrooms in the park is something that might be a gray area, but we could bring those back to the Park and Rec Commission for review as well. So that could be done.
Okay, thank you. And I wondered too, I recognize this is prefab, but are there ways to change the design or choose a different design, or it just improve the overall look of this, or is it just one choice and one choice only?
The prefabricated units are basically the design of the prefabricated units. Now that's not to say that maybe we can talk to them about, certain little different designs. I do want to caution though we did put this out to bid originally. We didn't get any responses, and then we went through the procurement process, and this was the only one that came back. By bringing this forward, it could slow this process down, and there is a chance that, with other options, nicer restrooms, that cost could go up considerably. So I can't say for sure that by not bringing this forward that's not the case. When we originally brought this forward and we talked about it, the strategic planning process, the conversation was about prefabricated units. In fact, there was actually some conversations at that time about self-contained restrooms, and we have actually improved on that considerably by making these restrooms prefabricated units that are actually hooked up to plumbing, water, sewer, electric. So this is a considerable improvement from some of the conversation that happened a couple years ago at the strategic planning session, because then part of that conversation was actually about self-contained. And these are full restrooms with full utilities. So
do we have prefab bathrooms in any of our other parks?
No, I don't think so. Aaron, maybe you can comment, but the ones that are as part of the water features, I believe those are not prefabricated, are they? I have Aaron wanting to.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Yes, the Apple Hill is a small prefabbed restroom, and the two water featured required restrooms are prefabbed, and they bring them in and drop them in with cranes. The rest of them are built from the ground up at a considerably higher cost, but not typical, no.
Okay. I would be interested in seeing if there's something that we can do to improve the look, even if it is a prefab. If there's something else we can do to make that just look a little bit more like the rest of the standards that we have across the city. Thank you.
Councilmember Rary?
So I'm looking at the staff report and I guess the bid document. In there it says wall finishes exterior, and it says paint over block filler. FRC, I'm not sure what FRC is, stucco pattern. James Hardy painted. And there's the alcove is a precision CMU painted. The exterior paint is PPG exterior gloss. So it does, I don't know if the stucco pattern is just the way that the bricks already look like, or if it's actually a stucco that will go out over those. Do you know?
No, I don't know that. The exteriors, the brick, any stucco would be the interior of some nature, but without deciphering the entire bid, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, so but it does say that the exterior color, the exterior paint is to be determined by the client. I do know that the Public Art and Design Academy over at Liberty has in the past painted the bathroom over at Oak Meadow Park. Is it possible that we may refer this to the Art Commission to possibly work with PATA on painting these?
I would think these would be perfect targets for the PATA projects. They did wonderful work up at the Oak Meadow restroom, and this blank canvas would certainly be a consideration, and I'm sure PATA would love jumping on it.
Okay. And I do know, I mean, even back 20 years on the Park Commission, we were looking at self-contained bathrooms back then. And because a lot of the parks, I mean, McLaren, we were even looking at a self-contained bathroom at McLaren, and also over at Creekside, because Creekside, both of them had their porta potties turned over quite often or set on fire. These are smaller areas. The fact that we're going to be able to get utilities in here is huge compared to what we were looking at before. But I do think that we can make these things look better by working with PATA and creating a beautiful design for those parks.
Member Mendoza?
Yeah, I am going to share my screen real quick. Can you all see, what are you seeing right now? Are you seeing the designs?
Yes.
Okay. So if we could just understand how much like a little cover is, so that, because the door is out to the sun. I mean, if we could just get options of how much that is and take it to Park and Rec, because there is options with that same build. This is the builder that we chose. So I think it's just like a menu, like what's the add-on for awnings over the front doors and things like that. That's the only thing I was hoping we could get. Because it's on their website. They do it. It sounds like it's something they do easily. So if we could just figure out how much that is, I think that would help.
If I can, the challenge is the request for quotes go out with a specific scope of work with a specific budget of $300,000 and change. So that product they sent us is what they offer for that price. We could certainly do upgrades, but at this point, the challenge is that's taken us way over budget. And like you mentioned earlier, we'd have to increase the budget, essentially start the process over again, but then also reach out to the non-bidders as well. So again, we're kind of limited with this company on give or take a few dollars, but nothing of substantial change. Typical awnings are in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. Again, it depends on the size. But then we're sitting there shopping with the company that gave us their product at a set price. So now we get into negotiations with the vendor, and then we're on thin ice there. We're starting to cross over and.
Yeah, I think it's something we have to do. I do not like the design at all. It's just, you don't want to put that in someone's neighborhood. It looks like a truck stop bathroom. So I think we need to go out and talk to the vendor, as difficult as it might be. But okay, if we want this one, how much to do these add-ons would it be? I mean, change orders happen in construction companies all the time. So I don't think they would be super upset about getting a change order or even be asked for a change order. So I think we need to send it to Park and Rec and get I'm not saying we spend another $200,000, but how much is like a patio cover? So if we paint it, we don't stucco, then can we just do a patio cover? If we use the art program at Liberty or something. But I just think that the cinder block, it's not Brentwood quality at all. And I get that you're going to have to come and ask for increased budget. Everyone in construction is coming in asking for increased budget in every aspect of my life. I mean, I'm paying more for wine bottles now. It's just the way it is. So I just don't want to cheat out our residents and give a neighborhood something janky.
Aaron, I have a question for you. With this increase in budget, where does that financing come from?
The development impact fee funds 32% maybe of it, and the rest is out of the capital right there in the staff report. The general fund would pick up the 68%, and the park control development impact picks up the 32%, give or take a percent.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Councilmember Meyer?
Is there any chance that one of our locally approved vendors could do an aftermarket type of awning, like move ahead with the project and then have one of our locally approved vendors give us a bid on that? If I'm making any sense.
That certainly is a possibility as well, absolutely.
And then maybe
or staff internal, we could do that as well with staff, depending on the nature of that work.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that we bring the dollars into one of our local small businesses too.
Councilmember Rare?
So on page 27, agenda page 27, there is an eaves. If you look at the side view of the floor plan, there is eaves.
If it's got about a 3-foot awning sticking out over it.
Yeah. So you guys want more than that?
Yeah, I want something with architectural detail like the other parks. I mean, this is just, I don't know. I don't like it. If you guys like it, it takes 3 votes to pass it. I don't like it. I wouldn't want it in my local park.
Even if it's painted with, with like a mural on it?
No. I think it needs to be something more. And if you go to their website, like if you look at the rest of our parks, they're nice. Like this is not, even with that hangover. But if you guys want it, I don't, but if you guys want it, that's totally up to you guys. I actually want to go to Park and Rec. I think that's what they're there for. And then they can have the discussion and talk to their neighbors and figure out, from a resident perspective, what they want.
I agree with that.
So at the end of the day, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I agree with that as well. That's, for me, that part makes sense. Yeah.
So Bruce, is that the actual colors that we're looking at in regards to those bathrooms being in those specific locations?
Aaron, you want to answer that? I think we have some.
The colors can be chosen by us and or the city.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that would make a difference. I don't know, but okay.
Is there a motion on this item?
I'd like to make a motion that this goes to Park and Rec and they review the design and come up with what they think is best for the neighborhood. And if they need a budget adjustment, then we review the budget adjustment.
Second that.
If I can just clarify the motion, I think the city manager also wants to speak, but just to clarify the motion, the motion would be deferring action on this item tonight and then sending it to the Park and Rec Commission for further study of what the options might be.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And does the maker of the second agree with that? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, if I may, Mayor, I just wanted to get some clarification from Damien. I think we statutorily have some time frame to either award the bid or not. So if we're not rejecting the bid, do we have a certain time frame that you're aware of where we have to either make a decision, cut or bait with this vendor?
I think this one is a little bit unique because it's through a cooperative purchasing agreement. And so the bid process has already really occurred, but we can certainly look into that further. Normally if it's a straight bid, yes, there'd be some limits on when we would have to award it, but I think we're still well within that time, especially since it's a cooperative purchasing agreement.
Okay, staff, do you have clear direction on what let me rephrase that, city attorney, do you have clear direction on what the motion is?
I certainly understand it, but I'm not going to be the one implementing the direction. So I think your initial thought, Mr. Mayor, was correct. If Mr. Mulder and Mr. Wanden understand what the motion is and prepared to move forward on it. I saw some nodding heads, so I think you're okay.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Rary,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez,
Aye.
Mayor Bryant,
Aye.
motion carries unanimous.
Okay, thank you. We'll move into public hearings. Item D1 pertains to an extension of the urgency ordinance for SB9, as well as any further directions to staff on the regular ordinance that will eventually replace it. And Alexis Morris will now present on this item. Alexis.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Can you hear me okay? Great. Give me a moment. I'd like to share my screen. Okay, thank you. So tonight, Council is considering an extension of an urgency ordinance implementing SB9. Council adopted this ordinance on December 14th of last year. But before I discuss the urgency ordinance in that process, I thought I would quickly summarize SB9, the law, for the members of the public that weren't watching the meeting on December 14th, because it's quite a lengthy piece of legislation and it's important for the rest of the conversation this evening. So I'll do my best to quickly summarize SB9. So SB9 was signed by the governor on September 16th and took effect of January 1st of this year. The law fundamentally changes how single-family zoning works in the state of California. I don't think I can understate that. It fundamentally changes how single-family zoning works. The new law requires ministerial approval of residential development of up to 2 units and lot splits in single-family residential zones. The law also extends the timelines for certain types of subdivision maps. Ministerial approval means the city cannot conduct a public hearing or conduct discretionary review of these projects. The projects are only required to obtain a building permit or parcel map approval prior to construction. The new law allows an existing single-family lot to contain up to 2 primary dwelling units and then up to 2 accessory dwelling units for a total of 4 units. If the lot were to be split under SB9, then the number of units on the lot could be limited to 2, either 2 primary dwelling units or a primary dwelling unit and an accessory dwelling unit. So as I said, the City Council adopted an urgency ordinance December 14th of last year due to the short time period between the signing of the law and its effective date. The urgency ordinance took effect December 14th, would allow the city to have its own standards in place prior to January 1st. The adopted urgency ordinance included a resolution adding objective design standards to the city's residential design guidelines. The provisions for 2-unit lot splits for 2-unit developments and lot splits that are contained in the state law are now incorporated into our municipal code through that urgency ordinance. The urgency ordinance is in effect for 45 days from December 14th. So the City Council now must vote to either extend the urgency ordinance or let it expire. Staff is recommending that the Council extend the urgency ordinance for 10 months and 15 days, which is the maximum amount of time allowed, in order to allow staff to draft the regular ordinance. Staff is currently working on that regular ordinance to replace the urgency ordinance. The regular ordinance would propose changes to our zoning code, our zoning ordinance, I'm sorry. So it would also be required to be reviewed by the Planning Commission prior to consideration by the City Council. At the December 14th City Council meeting, the council requested sessions to the SB9 ordinance and to the objective design standards be brought back to council for consideration. This slide here lists those requested additions listed in the staff report. Staff is currently working on researching these and finalizing the regular ordinance to be brought to Planning Commission for consideration, we hope late February. So if there are additional items that the council would like staff to research for inclusion in the ordinance or those objective design standards, it would be appropriate for council to discuss any of those additional items tonight and to provide staff direction on them. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions of staff? Okay. Councilmember Meyer?
I will have some comments as well, but I have some suggestions tonight, but really more will be coming in. So I would like to know, like after tonight, how we can present other suggestions for these restrictions and exemptions.
So substantive additions to the ordinance or the objective design standards. Mm-hmm. And the city attorney can weigh in. I think it would be best if they happen with the majority of council providing direction to staff. And these are arbitrary dates of ours, but we are trying to get a regular ordinance in place in a timely manner. So we are, trying to get to Planning Commission late February. So there is sort of a logical cutoff date for that. And tonight's meeting was envisioned as the time to do that. If that's not enough time, we can certainly come back to council for further discussions on additions to the ordinance. But I think it would be best if a majority of council gave direction on what they would like to.
Of course. Was there something further, Katie?
Perfect. No, if you had further questions, I was going to jump in, but I think Ms. Morris explained it perfectly. This has to go through the Planning Commission before it comes to you for final action. So we need to make sure that we have a majority of council directing what you want included or potentially included, depending on what the research brings back to us, before we get that draft to Planning Commission, so that once they act, it's ready for you to take final action.
I presented through the listserv option for the League of Cities. I presented the question to cities throughout the state and let them know that the meeting was tonight. And responses are pouring in right now. And I wish I had an intern. There were some really, really great suggestions coming in, but we had some technical difficulties with our email. And so I was not able to get through all of them. Anyway, so I would like the chance to be able to dedicate some time to going through all of those and pulling out what would work for us for consideration and then presenting those ideas at another council meeting.
I think as Alexis indicated, that's entirely up to you. If you pass the extension tonight, our existing urgency ordinance will remain in effect for another 10 months. So there is certainly time for you all to come back and reconsider this item, but we had detected some urgency in your direction to us to return with a regular ordinance. And so staff was trying to be responsive to that timeline. But as you said, we are happy to take direction for an extension there.
Yeah, and I absolutely appreciate how quickly this turned around. I'm asking if other council would support the idea of just the next council meeting, if I were able to compile all of this information. I just don't want to miss a chance to protect the city as much as we can, frankly.
Absolutely.
I agree, but we can cover this in our conversation if there are any more clarifying questions of staff at this time. Okay, seeing none, then we will move into public comments, and I'll turn to you, Margaret.
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call upon a name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I do have 2 hands raised. I'll start with Rod, followed by Carolina Villaseca. Rod, go ahead. Rod?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Sorry, my boom mic was up. Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment on my a quick clarification on my previous comment. In case I want to apologize to the park staff. I was making note of the amount of time that it had taken to get to a certain point, and I don't discount for a minute all the effort that they put into. And I want you to know that people here in Deer Ridge are grateful for this. We're happy. It's just that I've seen some commentary in social media. People are not familiar with the way that the city works, and we're, I think, reasonably wanting to know, like when things are going to happen, but not in any way to say, hey, you guys aren't doing great. We really appreciate what you're doing, and we're very glad to have this being done. And we were just looking for an update. So again, I want to apologize. Really, I didn't mean to insinuate in any way that that staff in particular is not moving fast enough on this. I know it's a tremendous amount of work. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for letting me take the time here to express that. Thank you.
The next speaker is Carolina Villaseca, followed by Danny Dorman. Carolina, go ahead.
Thank you. Tonight has just been, I'm prepared and not prepared. I was looking at the list of suggestions in the presentation, and I didn't get through the whole list before it went away from the screen. So I don't know if parking is on there for these units, because if you start splitting primary residences, you could have, let's say 2 cars per primary half. You could end up with, 4, 6, 8 cars, and where are people going to park? And so that needs to be part of the permit or whatever process they're going to go through to do this. People, you have to know there are some parts of town where everybody's using their garage as storage and all the cars are parked in the street. And if you take a house where the garage is already used for storage, you split that house in half, you can no longer use that garage for storage because now it's a living quarter. And where are all the extra cars going to go? So that's my suggestion. Let's keep in mind that right now, the streets in Brentwood are not full of cars like in places like Dublin. In Dublin, there's not a spot on any street where you can park. So just keeping in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Danny Dorman.
Great, thank you. And I want to thank you for all the work with regards to this, especially Jovita, who has been on the forefront of addressing SB9 and 10. I'm sure some of you are also doing this, maybe behind the scenes, and if you are, maybe be a little bit more vocal about it. The question I have, and I haven't heard anyone yet, and I think I've said this 2 or 3 times when this has come up, how is Beverly Hills, Black Hawk, and some of these other uppity neighborhoods and cities, how are they addressing this? Because I can't imagine, one, Beverly Hills ever saying, oh, we can no longer build single family units. And 2, someone splitting up Clark Gable's house because they feel like splitting it up. So they have to have something in place. And I don't know if this is a city attorney thing. I don't know if this is a staff thing, but I have to believe that they have something in place, even if it's some backroom deal. And I really hope that somebody look into this, because what Jovita is going through right now is an uphill battle. And I am supporting it 100%, of course, because I also, and I think I've said this once or twice too, that the idea of splitting homes was to provide more vacancy and opportunities, especially for low-income housing. And that is not true. It's more for developers and corporate entities to come in and just parse up our area. And those who are thinking, oh, this is going to help our community, especially, like I said, the lower income community, the starving student, the teacher, the cop, whatever the case may be. That is just a front, kind of like the whole mixed housing blanket where, oh yeah, we're doing this for low income, but no, they're not. They're just doing it to get around the system. So please, 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 I can't emphasize this enough. Look and see how Beverly Hills is doing this, and Black Hawk. And again, some of these other cities, they have to have something, and we should be able to mirror that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Thank you. At this time, then, we will close public comments, move into council discussion. Councilmember Mendoza.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Before you begin council discussion, as this is a public hearing, you'll need to do a formal motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further speakers, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Oh, moved.
I'll second that.
We have a first and 2 seconds. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
So at this time, we'll move into council discussion, and Councilmember Mendoza.
First, I want to tell Mr. Dorman that the former mayor of Beverly Hills is on my call every Sunday night, and they are dealing with the same issue. There is no check the box, you're out of here. I mean, some historical sites can be protected, but every city in California is subject to SB9, SB10, all of these land use issues. So that's for Mr. Dorman. We're not, our city attorney isn't missing the boat on anything when it comes to protecting us from SB9. A couple of things. I know we had talked about having covered parking, and I don't see that on the list. Is that because it's included somewhere else in a building code or something? We talked about covered garage parking for the units.
Right. I apologize if I did miss that. We did bring it up. You did, I believe, email us about that, and that's not on the list, so we can add that.
Yeah. Cool. And then the solar part, is that part of the building code, so it doesn't have to be part of this one?
So solar is required in the building code, not solar panels, but solar ready. So anything beyond that would be a discussion to have.
Yeah, so I want to require solar panels.
Okay.
I think that Orinda was doing that. I can't remember who was doing that. Someone was doing that. And then other cities are also, they're putting in affordable housing clauses. And I know that our attorney was anxious about it. I say we throw anxious out the window. And if we want to take care of people who need affordable housing, we put it in our code. And we deal with it when it comes up, because the whole intent of SB9 is to provide affordable housing. So we are meeting the intent of the code when we put in affordable housing. That's, I mean, no one else, I mean, that's just my point of view. And then other cities are enforcing the owner occupancy. It falls on, enforcement will fall on the city. So it's something we take on, but a lot of other cities around California are enforcing the 3-year, and they will have penalties if they sell or move out before the 3 years. So I'd like to look at that as well. And I think that's my short list.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Meyer.
I can start by saying, and from what I'm receiving from other cities, that yes, I am seeing affordable clauses in there. I am seeing flood zone and floodway. I'm seeing owner occupancy, all of that. But I wanted to just clarify for Danny and for others who are interested. But what I was talking about when I said the listserv is Cal Cities has an email that if a council member or a mayor from one city wants to find out what other cities in the state are doing, they can send an email to this address. It goes out to everyone who's on that list. And then you start getting responses back from people who are interested in supporting your efforts and letting you know what they're doing in their city. So I sent out an email saying, what are all of you doing to mitigate some of the impacts of SB9? So this is what I'm starting to get in my inbox. And a lot of people are sending information. They're sending resolutions. They're sending connections to their city managers and city planners and saying, reach out to them. So it's gonna take some time to get everything going. But I wanted you to know, Danny, and others paying attention to that this is one way that we're all doing our due diligence here to trying to find out what other cities are doing. One of the cities that I heard back from, I thought it was kind of interesting. They were getting exemptions or pushing exemptions for land that is planned for habitat conservation and habitat for protected species. Thought it was interesting that they were putting some of those environmental aspects in there. There was definitely one that said no more than 2 units, even including ADUs or ADUs. People are pushing pretty hard. And I think some of what we're doing right now, and Alexis, I can see you smiling, some of this is that we're pushing as hard as we can. We may not get every one of these exemptions, but we're trying to make sure that we can protect Brentwood as best we can to the full extent of everything we can come up with to throw at the wall and see what sticks. And these are all things that we're hearing from the community. We're hearing from other cities. Jovita's hearing it in the work she's doing with the initiative. We're all doing our due diligence here to try and figure out ways to protect the city. So if you have suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm going to continue to do to research all the emails that are coming my way and see if I can figure out some way to compile that data into something that's reportable by the next city council meeting. In the meantime, just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Councilmember Rary.
I want to answer Carolina's question regarding parking. I believe it's 1 parking space per unit we can require unless it is within a half a mile of a transit stop that it's a high frequency transit stop. Is it every 15 minutes? Or
15 minutes or less.
Yeah. I don't think we've got very many of those that continues that. So I think we're okay with that. Maybe not on Brentwood Boulevard or around streets of Brentwood. Those may be 2 places that we may have some difficulties with. The other is if there's a car share within 1 block of the house, then they don't have to provide for parking. I do agree with everything that Jovita, all the additions that Councilmember Mendoza had requested. I am very interested in finding out. I did receive your email as a blast out. I did not respond to it because I just didn't respond to it. Plus, you already know what's going on in our city, so no reason to respond to it. But I am very much interested to find out what other cities are doing and how we can apply that. And so I think that maybe having even a workshop about all of those different things that we might be able to do would be a great idea to formulate what we want to move forward on and for our final, for the real municipal code.
Yeah, I completely agree with doing everything that we can. I know our city attorney does an outstanding job and his staff as well. But I agree that we need to put the line as far in the favor of our community as possible. We have been through SB9, and Mr. Dorman, it would be wonderful if there was something to do other than what it has held us hostage to, really. But the fact is, like Councilmember Mendoza said, this applies unilaterally, and this is not something that we can get out of. So we have to fight to keep as much local control and control of what our community is going to look like as possible. So I would completely agree with the recommendation from Councilmember Mendoza to move forward with this and come back and see what we can do to protect ourselves as much to the greatest extent as possible. Unless there is further conversation regarding this, do we have a motion regarding this item?
I'll make a motion to include the affordable housing to it. My mind just went blank. All the items that Councilmember Mendoza had requested to be added. I'd also like to include a workshop in the future on this before we move forward with the final ordinance.
I'll second that.
Okay, Margaret?
Can I jump in real quickly?
Yes.
So we have two separate things going on here tonight. One, we're looking for your action on the extension of the existing urgency ordinance. So that's not going to require any amendment tonight, and you can consider that as its own package. And then secondarily, if you want to provide direction to staff to bring this back for further discussion, perhaps in the format of a workshop where we can add all of these items to our research list and have some information available to you, then that would be the second part of it. I just don't want to get our urgency ordinance sort of mixed up in between those two. So Councilmember Rary, is your motion just as to the future consideration and not amending the existing urgency ordinance? Is that correct?
With the extension of the parking garage, which was supposed to, the covered parking, which was supposed to be part of the urgency ordinance as guidelines, correct? That was what Alexis had said that it was supposed to have been there.
Yeah, we talked about it in our last meeting.
And I'll let Alexis jump in. I thought that was supposed to be added to the list of things for you to consider for the regular ordinance, because right now we're just sort of in a position to continue or extend the existing urgency ordinance and not amend that tonight. So let's get some clarification there.
Is there any harm in amending the emergency ordinance and adding those things? What's the harm in doing that?
We're just on a process right now. So the state law allows us to adopt an urgency ordinance as you did on your December 14th meeting. And then the second step is where you are tonight, which would just be extending that same ordinance, not amending it. So we're in a process and we're on the second step of that process right now.
So is it against the rules to adopt with amendment?
I'm not aware that we are at liberty to amend it at this point. We're just in the extension procedure, not in the sort of redrafting that would take us back. And that's not what we have noticed for tonight.
So can we still vote on Councilmember Rary's motion as something staff adds for the permanent ordinance?
As the second part of my motion.
Yeah. So what I understand is that Councilmember Rary has suggested that we come back to you with a workshop format, perhaps, at which we will consider the requests that are listed on packet page 95, as well as the additional research items that we've discussed tonight for inclusion in the regular ordinance that will eventually supersede this urgency ordinance.
I thought, and I'm confused real quick. I thought, for example, affordable housing, we want it in. Other cities are doing it, we want it in. I thought we had agreed. The owner occupancy, the city said the problem is that they take on the onus. So we as a city are saying that we think it's important enough that we will enforce the owner occupancy, or there's fines or whatever we can do on the back end of that. So why can't we add those for the permanent?
You can certainly consider adding those for the permanent. What I'm saying is we're not in a position to amend the existing urgency ordinance. And so if you want us to consider adding those for the permanent, that's a discussion we can have at this workshop or whatever future format you want to do that. We're just not in a position to amend the existing urgency ordinance tonight. And we'll certainly take all the direction that you've given us tonight and research all those items and bring them back to you for inclusion, possible inclusion in the regular ordinance down the road.
Otherwise, it's a first reading, which we would have to wait until the next meeting that we had to have a first reading of a new urgency ordinance and then come back for a second reading 30 days later, correct?
Thank you. So we're on step 2.
Who's on first?
So with that, as detailed in the staff report, adopt an ordinance extending the urgency ordinance pertaining to SB9 related municipal code amendments as the first part of the motion. The second part of the motion is to have a workshop, SB9 workshop for the design standards and other items that we would like to be added to the ordinance.
I second that. Oh, sorry.
For the sake of the record, we'll take the first half of your motion and let everybody second and vote on that as they see fit, and then maybe we can move forward with the second half of your motion if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a first and a second. Margaret?
I'll read the title of the ordinance: an urgency ordinance amending section 16.020.060, 17.100.005, 17.620.007, and 17.820003 of, and adding chapters 16.169, 17.796, and 17.797 to the Brentwood Municipal Code. And I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Rary, could you make your second part of the motion?
My second part of the motion is to get all the information that was presented tonight. The items that Councilmember Mendoza, it was the parking, covered parking, it was affordable housing,
Owner occupancy.
Owner occupancy.
Solar panels.
Well, solar panels are part of that.
No, so the solar infrastructure, but not actually solar panels are.
Okay. So, and the solar panels. In addition to receiving the list of items from Councilmember Meyer that she has assembled from across the California cities and counties. Well, I guess it didn't go to counties, it just went to the cities. In addition to anything else that the council has found between now and that workshop. But yes.
I'll second
that.
Okay, staff, do you have clear direction on this?
Yes, thank you. I'll work with Ms. Morris to figure out how much time that this might take the various departments involved to come up with a timeline to get it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. Moving on to item E1, pertains to amendments to the current operating and capital improvement budget. And Carrie Breen will now present on this item. Carrie?
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Allow me just a second here to share my screen. There we go. Okay, well, good evening again. I'm here tonight to provide you with a mid-year budget and financial update. In accordance with City Council policy, the city's fiscal condition and adopted budget are reviewed at least twice annually. This year, we have presented financial updates a little more frequently, and having just completed the strategic planning financial capacity discussions, some of the information in this mid-year report has been previously discussed. In this presentation, I will first provide a brief general fund summary of last year's results and this year's projections. Following that, I will cover the proposed budget amendments, starting first with the general fund, followed by the enterprise funds, and then other city funds. The presentation will conclude with an overview of items on our budget watch list, along with next steps as we prepare for the upcoming strategic plan and the development of the next two-year budget. Okay, starting with a very quick summary of last year's general fund results. We finished the year with a $2 million surplus above the 30% reserve requirement. This surplus was mainly due to the strong housing market and economic recovery from the pandemic. Sales tax revenue also benefited from pent-up demand and a significant amount of federal stimulus money. Half of the surplus, or $1 million, was used to reduce unfunded pension obligations, and the other half was transferred to the Pension Other Post-Employment Benefit Obligation Fund, also referred to as the Budget Stabilization Fund. At the end of the fiscal year, the general fund had a 30% reserve fund balance of $19.4 million in compliance with budget and fiscal policy requirements. In looking at the current fiscal year, we are conservatively estimating a general fund surplus of about $1 million. This projection includes all of the proposed budget amendments included in this report, and it is similar to what was estimated at the strategic planning workshop last month. In a moment, I will cover the specific recommended revenue and expense budget adjustments, but before moving on, I would like to note that staff is recommending that the projected current year $1 million surplus be reserved in the general fund as a source of funding towards the upcoming strategic plan. A complete financing plan for the strategic plan will be presented to the City Council on February 22nd. If the City Council approves the $1 million reservation, staff will allocate those funds towards several one-time projects identified by the Council as strategic planning priorities. In looking at current general fund revenues, an increase of $1.4 million, or about 2.1% of budget, is being proposed for the fiscal year. The largest single source of revenue for the general fund is property taxes. Property tax revenue is, of course, based on the assessed valuation of property in the city. The most recent valuation increase of 4.68% was announced by the County Assessor's Office in July of 2021 and was slightly above the 4% included in the current budget. This higher than expected increase will provide an additional $127,000 in property tax related revenue. Sales tax is the second largest revenue source for our general fund. Current projections indicate that this year's sales tax revenue will be approximately $10.4 million. This is about 11% higher than last year's revenue and about $1 million higher than the current budget. This projection includes the latest information available reflective of the economy continuing to rebound from the pandemic. This estimate does include the impacts that the Omicron variant could have on sales activity, although at this time, we do not expect significant negative fiscal impacts from that. An increase in the revenue budget of about $89,000 is being proposed for increased program participation in our sports and recreation programs. This includes youth camps and sport classes and the additions of programs at the recently renovated Liberty High School swimming pool. These activities will be primarily held outdoors and are not affected by the recent facility closures. Indoor activities are planned for later in the spring. Other activity-based revenues have recovered in the current year at a stronger pace than was originally anticipated. The majority of the remaining $200,000 increase are for transient occupancy taxes or hotel taxes, business license tax, and franchise fee revenue based on strong year-to-date activity. Now, as mentioned in the introduction, the majority of these revenue increases were already known last month and have already been included in the strategic planning financial capacity discussion. On the expenditure side, an increase of $400,000, or about 0.6% of the budget, is being proposed. An increase of $112,000 is being requested for park and recreation programs for those added youth camps and sport classes and the programs at the Liberty High swimming pool. These costs are partially offset by the program revenues that I discussed just a minute ago. An additional $63,000 is being requested for increased water usage in landscape operations and at the Brentwood Senior Center due to climate conditions earlier this year. The successor agency division of the general fund accounts for activities related to the city in its role as successor to the former Brentwood Redevelopment Agency. And so when the dissolution law first went into effect about a decade ago, the city at that time continued to lease out facilities which were suddenly property of the successor agency. The city was required to reserve such rental payments for the eventual transfer of those funds back to the successor agency. The city collected and held a total of about $96,000 in rent payments, and the budget amendment tonight would allow the city to turn over those rental payments to the successor agency. This amount will have no impact on the general fund, as those funds have been held in a specific reserve for this purpose since they were collected. Other increases include proposed budget amendments for an increase in animal control costs provided under contract by the county, uniforms for staff at the community center, legal services, and consulting services in the planning division. Again, in total, the requested budget expenditure increase for the general fund is about $400,000. Next, I will cover the city's enterprise funds. These funds include water, wastewater, and solid waste operations. A budget increase of $1.7 million in water usage revenue is being recommended. The current budget was set conservatively in May of 2020 based on usage projections at that time. The city has seen increased usage over the past year, resulting in these additional revenues. Of course, the increased revenue is then partially offset by increase in costs relating to water conveyance for the increased volume, and then also for water quality maintenance. It's about $780,000 in costs for that. In addition, an amendment of $250,000 is being requested for contractual services to fund a water supply option study that would provide alternatives for sufficient water supply to support the build-out population of the city. A budget increase in the water replacement fund of $236,000 is being requested to fund a project proposed to be added to the CIP budget tonight. This project is titled the Water Treatment Plant Chemical Systems Improvements. It would be managed by the Contra Costa Water District under an agreement between the city and the district. And then in addition, an additional increase of $136,500 is being proposed to provide funding for the replacement of the water treatment plant ozone generators due to the recent failure of one of the existing generators. Okay, moving on to the city's other funds. An increase in revenue of about $70,000 is being proposed in the citywide park assessment district for increased park and facility rental demand. This is mainly at Sunset Park. Offsetting this revenue increase is an expense increase of about $160,000 due to significant increases in PG&E utility rates. Additionally, due to climate conditions in the first half of the fiscal year, there is an increased request of $17,000 in water costs for several park locations. Staff is requesting an increase in the roadway development impact fee fund of $60,000 to look at the Lone Tree Way Union Pacific undercrossing project. These funds would allow for an assessment of the feasibility of making improvements to the existing at-grade crossing, which, if acceptable to the railroad, could significantly reduce the cost of the currently planned undergrounding project. An increase in the facilities maintenance fund budget of $50,000 is being proposed for the maintenance, repair, and cleaning of the pavers around the exterior of the City Hall. And then other recommended adjustments include $1,500 expense for the Public Art Acquisition Fund for repairing public art, a $51,000 revenue decrease in the gas tax fund, and a $478,000 expense increase in the insurance fund to cover increased general liability and property insurance costs. Finally, we have also included a budget adjustment necessary to facilitate the transfer of the fire impact fees and property to the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District under an agreement that was reached near the end of last fiscal year. These amounts were approved last year, but the transfers didn't take place until this current fiscal year, and as such, they need to be rebudgeted to allow for that to occur. Okay, so what are we watching? There are several items currently on our budget watch list that we are monitoring for potential impacts to the city's finances. One of the biggest economic challenges currently is the inflation rate, as was discussed earlier tonight. We are concerned that if the high inflation rate persists, we will see increased operational and capital project costs. We're obviously already starting to see this, and it's just a matter of how long this continues. This is also leading to signs of stress in the financial markets, which may potentially adversely impact the returns that CalPERS is able to achieve. Rising interest rates, which would be the product of all of this, may also dampen housing price appreciation. So while economic conditions remain strong, we are monitoring these risk factors. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, we do not expect the Omicron variant to cause any significant fiscal impacts to the city. However, until conditions improve, we will continue to monitor and remain cautious on that front. Looking at water, although we had a great start to the rainy season with strong storms in October and December, a dry January has again raised concerns about a potential drought declaration and mandatory water conservation. This could negatively impact the water fund, so we'll be monitoring this as well. And then finally, we've mentioned a couple times now that we're seeing a substantial increase in our past due utility accounts. Past due balances are currently running about $1.6 million above normal. We will be receiving state grant funds to help reduce some of this amount. Staff is also applying for wastewater grant assistance from the state, and we expect to receive funds there too. But despite these efforts, it is likely that the city will experience increased uncollectible utility accounts and write-offs in subsequent fiscal years. We're not going to know until the process plays itself out a little bit. We will, of course, keep the council informed as to our progress in reducing the past due balance amounts in the coming months. So in concluding this mid-year budget report, I would like to cover the next steps as we work towards the strategic plan adoption, the capital budget, and the upcoming 2-year operating budget. So on February 22nd, we will present the City Council with a proposed staffing plan for current operational needs, along with a funding plan for the upcoming strategic plan. At this time, we are optimistic that we can fund the majority of priority projects that were established by the City Council. On April 12th, we will hold the Capital Improvement Program Budget Workshop. This will be an opportunity to review, guide, and direct the city's capital spending plan, which will include approved projects from the strategic plan. On May 10th, we will hold the Operating Budget Workshop, which will be the opportunity to review and direct the city's 2-year operations spending plan. Approved staffing and strategic plan costs will also be included here. Then the final capital and operating budgets will be presented to City Council prior to June 30th for the final approval and adoption. And with that, this concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Questions of staff?
When it comes to the PG&E, we know their fees are going to continue to rise. I don't see any stopping it. Do we use solar to offset that like the schools do?
We do have solar in a couple, so we have solar on the roof of the PD. We have solar at, I believe it's the courtyard, maybe the treatment plant. Mickey may be able to correct me with the exact location, but I know it's Public Works has solar. And then we have solar at the aquatic complex. So we do have, those are under the PPAs, so the purchase power agreement. So we are offsetting some of our costs through that. I know at the time we looked at City Hall, but that was not financially, it didn't pencil out. It's something we can look at again, but it has been, there was a series that we went through about, I want to say maybe 4 years ago or so, where we looked at all of our facilities and wanted to see where it would make sense to use solar to reduce our costs. So yeah.
Is our solar true-up right now negative or positive for us?
We certainly are not generating as much electricity as we use. I'm not sure we're under the way it works, the way I understand it is that we are purchasing power. So we're leasing out those panels. We don't own them. So there's a company that we then buy that electricity from at a reduced rate to what we would have paid PG&E. So it's not quite like the same. Yeah. But it is a reduction in cost that we have at those 3 facilities, but it does not offset. It's not enough to pay for all of our costs, no.
Okay. And you've already said you did review of all the other sites, and it's just those other ones didn't make sense.
It was several years ago, so I don't want to say what it would look like today, but this was, it was done probably 4 years ago or so. I seem to remember Mickey being involved, and I think he's been here been back about 5 years, so that sounds about right.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for the detailed report.
Councilmember Ray.
Thank you, Carrie, for all of this information. I know it takes a lot of time to put it together. Did I hear you say that CalPERS may not make its projection?
That was a little bit of editorializing. So they haven't come out with anything like that yet. This was more of a budget watch. So these are things we're just keeping an eye on. Okay. So one of the things that is starting to look a little bit like we could be having some difficulty is what's going on in the equity markets. I mean, we've seen that this week. Things are going a little crazy if you've at all followed the stock markets. Those are the sorts of things when we start to see this volatility, we're just watching. If the market drops, 15, 20%, we need to factor that into our longer term projections because that's going to matter. Currently, there's nothing that hasn't happened. It's just a budget watch. We're just watching at this point because it's starting to look a little, things aren't as smooth as they were, over the past.
Last year when it was really good?
Well, no matter what you did last year, right? You could throw a dart at the, at a stock and you win. Yeah. That might not be the case going forward for a little while here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further clarifying questions of staff? Okay, then at this time, we will open public comment. I'll turn it to you, Margaret.
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature and I'll call upon your name if provided. And unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I'm seeing no hands raised.
Thank you. At this time, we'll close public comment, move into council discussion. Any further council discussion? Okay,
I don't have no discussion. I want to thank our staff for a wonderful report, and thank you, Carrie, to you and your department. Thank you.
Yeah, and same thing. Raise my hand just to tell you thank you so much. I appreciate all of the I think we all do all the detail.
Yeah, very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carrie and your staff. Then at this time, we will move into.
Do we need to make?
We need to make a motion.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Do I have a motion on this item?
As detailed in the staff report and as supplemented by staff, adopt a resolution amending the current operating and capital improvement program budgets.
Second.
First and a second, roll call vote.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. Move into item E2. Pertains to a funding opportunity and the location of a youth center, and our city manager, Tim Ogden, will now present on this item.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. We have had multiple discussions about potential youth centers over the last year, and tonight hopefully is a little bit of a culmination of moving forward on consensus on a possible youth center location. So recently, past November and December, we held the strategic plan workshop, and it was decided that the Brentwood Education and Technology Center was not the appropriate site for the youth center location being planned. And there was some initial direction to look at Windsor Way Park. And subsequent to that, I've had several conversations with the Contra Costa County, who has, through the Measure X funds, an allocation towards a youth center for East County. And they are still working through what their process looks like and selection of a city or a nonprofit entity to do that youth center in East County. And part of the process that I've shared with them is that we need to make sure we've got city council consensus on a site. And so I'll walk through a couple different sites as outlined in the staff report, and the public can follow along at home as well with more details in the staff report. But we'll talk about these possible locations here that we've identified. So the first two are city-owned vacant properties, 181 Sycamore Court, otherwise known as the Windsor Way site, and the northwest corner of Guthrie Lane and Harvest Park Drive. This is a former storm drainage basin that was deemed surplus by the city council a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Both are vacant, 2.5 to almost 3 acres large, and again, city owned. These next two are both successor agency owned and vacant lands. 1000 Central Boulevard, about 3.5 acres, and the southeast corner of Oak Street and Walnut Boulevard, also vacant land. And note here that just 1.5 net acres. There may be some additional public right-of-way involved there. And then you'll notice we had an appraisal done in July of 2021 for all 4 of these remaining properties, by the way. And then at 7030 Brentwood Boulevard, the former La Mexicanos Market, does have a facility on it, but would be demolished, would not likely be reused in any way. And again, some public right-of-way acquisition needed to widen Brentwood Boulevard. So anticipated 1.6 net acres left. And finally, the only real existing facility that could be repurposed, this is at 400 Guthrie Lane, or the former CD building, and CD as in compact disc manufacturing that occurred there and has been vacant for numerous years, and again with their appraised values. I note that for all of the vacant parcels, based on the analysis that was done at the Brentwood Education and Technology Center, which was about 24,000 square feet, and just for comparison purposes, again, this Guthrie Lane former CD building, about 20,000 square feet. If that similar size facility were built today, estimated to cost about $700 per square foot, that would be about $14 million. And if you halved that, and maybe only a 10,000 square foot youth center, that would be approximately $7 million. Briefly, here are the locations. So here's where the Windsor Wayside is, between Brentwood Boulevard and just off of Sycamore. And here's a Google Street View. The Northwest Guthrie Lane site, here's the 3-acre former storm basin site just south of Balfour and Guthrie Lane. 1000 Central Boulevard, not far from Brentwood Boulevard on Central Boulevard, directly adjacent to these railroad tracks. Walnut and Oak, not too far from the downtown. Brentwood Boulevard on the north side, the La Mexicanas property, located just south of Sunset and east of Brentwood Boulevard. And finally, the Guthrie Lane site, the former CD building. And this is located just adjacent to the existing police station. In fact, it was the same builder, and most of the public thinks it's still part of the police station because it looks identical in architecture. It's actually a separate building, again, about 20,000 square feet. So with these potential properties, what we're looking for direction from you tonight is to select a potential site that could be utilized in pursuing the Measure X funds from the county. If it is an existing facility, the former CD building, again, we've estimated that we would need to purchase the property as the city from the successor agency, likely at the appraised value, and then an estimated rehabilitation cost, a wild guess based on some of the known issues that would need to be further assessed. So it could be $2 million or more. And again, new construction for any of these other existing sites. Would like to make a recommendation that if you select, let's say, the CD building, and if perhaps Measure X funds are not then obtained by the city, that perhaps also select a vacant land of your preference so that we could also pursue that if we need to go and finance all this on our own. Just as an example, instead of spending $5 million on the former CD building and repurposing it, if for whatever reason we don't get the $5 million from the county through the Measure X funds, and you were to place $5 million towards building a new building, maybe you spend another $2 million and get to $7 million and build a brand new one, and maybe that's a better deal than a $5 million building that's being repurposed. So just a couple options for your consideration. With your direction tonight, we would come back with any of the successor agency owned properties that need to further be acquired from the city. And there's a lengthy process detailed in the staff report. Essentially have to then go to the oversight board overseen by the county and their partners, taxing agency entities that are sitting on that board for then approval, and then have to go to the Department of Finance. All these successor agency owned properties, and Carrie was just mentioning a little bit about the successor agency, since the dissolution that occurred several years ago, have to be sold, and those proceeds then shared back to the state and all the other taxing entities in that tax rate area. And just for information purposes, any of these successor agency owned properties that are then sold, approximately 16% of those proceeds would come back to the city. And in the case of, say, the former CD building, if you purchased it from the successor agency as the city for $2.8 million, the approximate 16% coming back would be about $450,000 worth. that could be repurposed back in. So essentially you would offset your cost by that same amount. So maybe you're only purchasing it for 2.1, 2.2, right? So with that, I'd be glad to take any questions if what we're looking for tonight isn't clear. But again, picking your favored site for us to continue to pursue Measure X funds with, and perhaps a vacant land site as well to pursue if we want to pursue something new if the Measure X funds do not come in. One other point, we may have to update these appraisals as well before we either purchase it or in another discussion, not on this agenda, put them out to sell to the market. Because again, that was done in July of 2021, and really best practice is that you have an appraised value within 6 months so you get current market conditions being considered. Also, I should point out that if you select the former CD building as your preferred location, we would like to come back to you at some point in that process of acquiring the site, getting approvals through Oversight Board and Department of Finance to bring an architect in and do a similar process, conceptual drawings, and do a more thorough analysis of what are some of the issues that need to be rehabilitated in the building to accommodate whatever conceptual plan is selected. And I believe, as the council had suggested at the strategic plan workshop, that with the site selected and the funds acquired, any programmatic considerations, and probably consistent with your direction tonight about the bathrooms, we would send this to the Parks and Recreation Commission to then assess all of the programmatic uses, needs, costs, expenses, and opportunities at your proposed youth center, and then would come back to you with consideration therefrom. So with that, open to any questions as we look for direction tonight.
Questions of staff? Councilmember Meyer?
Mine is about the appraisal. In looking at the tech center was appraised at 1.6 million, if I'm correct.
Correct.
The building has been appraised at, or in July, appraised at 2.8, and it's smaller. Can you explain why there's such a stark difference?
The appraiser will look at conditions of facilities. They'll look at its current land use and its highest and best potential use in what that would look like. I don't know offhand, I don't recall if it was the same appraiser. So perhaps thinking in the same way, or if it's slightly different appraiser, they all use the same standards, or they're supposed to. But I don't know that I can answer why that's why that cost differential is different. It has, you know, for example, the former CD building has a higher roof line, so it could create more opportunities. That could be, my guess is why that would be a higher value property.
Potential the outdoor space, or I mean, the acreage is similar, right?
The acreage is a little bit bigger for the tech center, and then when you think about the lease or the through the CC&Rs that we have part of the parking lot. So I believe that was also considered in the total acreage. But again, that you would think that would cost more, but it apparently didn't in the appraisal.
Yeah, and then the CD building did have a significantly larger amount of outdoor space that's actually usable. Zoning for all of these areas would be complementary to what we're looking at?
We would have to confirm that on all of these parcels. Several of these are parks sites, and I believe active recreation youth programming could be compatible with that. The former CD building, it does describe some conditional uses that would need to be approved through probably the Planning Commission, the City Council. So there are a little bit of planning steps to go through with all of these properties.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of staff?
So Tim, quick question. I know obviously we got to select one of these. I know Councilmember Meyer mentioned that the CD building had a little bit more space up front. Is that more for the parking area that she may be speaking about? Is that what that area is?
I would say if you're comparing it to the tech center, there's more space behind the building and in the parking lot than at the CD building. The CD building does have some parking constraints, at least on site. We would propose adding some off-site parking along Guthrie Lane It's a fairly wide street, so would have our Public Works department look at that in more detail if that's a consideration.
Tim, just for some clarification, the vacant land at the southeast corner of Oak Street and Walnut Boulevard, is that the piece of property that has the Makoko line train tracks running contiguous to it?
Correct. Correct. And I believe the Central Boulevard one would also have the railroad. Actually, I can go back here and just double check, but I believe it's right up against, yeah, it's up against the railroad as well.
Which one's behind the CVS?
That's the Central one.
Central?
1000 Central Boulevard.
Because that was a location they had discussed, you know, back when in regards to possibly even a generational center, but also a youth center, because it was pretty centralized in regards to the location of, you know, everybody having access to it.
Sure.
The CD building, where's that sit at when it comes to the demographics of Brentwood in the city? Is it really way out there on the outskirts, or is it reasonable for, you know, youth, kids, and families to be able to get to?
I think the most centralized in the city, I would suppose the distances would be to get to from any quadrant of the city. This former CD building is on the most southeasternmost edge of the city, so it is a little more challenging. That may be perhaps an obstacle in the county considering funding any Measure X funds that would accommodate all of East County. But again, that is a facility that could be repurposed, rehabilitated, and probably quickest, and perhaps the least expensive when compared to a new building, but it would be repurposing as best you could.
Councilmember Meyer?
In considering the CD building and the Measure X funding from the county, they are looking at something that would be accessible throughout other cities, not just Brentwood. So this would not be something that would be Brentwood focused per se. It could be like your Byron and Knightson might be able to utilize Discovery Bay, those areas as well. And is the county, they're looking at that. They're also, if I understand correctly, looking at something that's already kind of ready to go, like a project that would be that much more quick to final completion. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, the County Board of Supervisors authorized for 2 new youth centers, or not, I wouldn't say necessarily new, but to accommodate and fund youth centers in Central County and then East County. So anticipated to be from Pittsburgh, Antioch, Oakley, Brentwood, and the surrounding unincorporated area, to have a youth center that serves all of that region. Quickest to market is absolutely of interest to them in my discussions with the staff at the county, that they had some initial interest to try to fund it this calendar year. And so I have shared that if that existing facility is selected, that we could quickly work through the process to get it assessed with an architect, get it out to bid, and get some of the construction work done, and perhaps even open by the end of the year. I may be overly optimistic. My staff say that sometimes occurs, but would like to see something that we can move through fairly quickly, certainly compared to a brand new facility that could take anywhere from 12 to 24 months of construction, et cetera, and design. So in addition to acquiring the properties, which could add 4 to 6 months of process, especially as we purchase something from the successor agency, which involves a lot of other bureaucratic processes with the county and then the state.
And what other cities are being considered to host?
So the county, we are probably the most eager and have really been the only one who's been asking about these funds. So as far as I understand from the county, no other city or nonprofit in that East County has reached out to the county about these funds yet. So I'm not really sure what the other interest level is. And if I have my way, I'll keep it a secret and make sure that we are in the running for this.
But we're also not a shoe-in. I mean, they're certainly looking at a lot of different factors that could feed into whether they would prefer an actual building that gets repurposed or a brand new, from the ground up kind of thing. There are factors there too.
Correct. Yeah, it's anticipated that they'll probably do some kind of request for information process. We actually haven't heard it with any confidence what their final plans are, but it is my guess is they would reach out to the 4 cities and find out who has a property, who has interest, who has the capacity, and who could be quickest to put something together with all the other data they are also probably looking at, including the youth delinquency issues, drugs, alcohol, pregnancy, dropout rates, homelessness, and really want to target those most underserved communities. We may not compare well when you compare to Pittsburgh, Antioch per se, but again, if we're ready to go, that would be a strong consideration for them as well.
And my last question, sorry to take so much time, the youth center that's coming to Pittsburgh, do we know if that's 100% covered by their developer fees, or do you know that by any chance?
I'm just aware of a development agreement that was executed with the city of Pittsburgh to provide funding for a youth center. I don't have any details on timing or total cost, but I believe it was several $1 million contributed through that development agreement for that use.
I'm just wondering if it's something they could request Measure X funds as supplemental to increase the size or scope or whatever.
I believe that would be possible, correct.
And then Antioch could potentially do the same if they're trying to potentially refurbish one of their existing buildings as well. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, we need to jump on this.
Councilmember Rarick?
Got a couple questions. It's the same question I've asked since the beginning of this. I really think we need a youth center, but we still haven't talked about the cost to run it. And after looking at the RYSE in Richmond, they're at $3.5 million a year to run theirs, and theirs doesn't cost anything to anybody who attends there. The Concord Youth Center charges $33 a month for the first child and $17 for each sibling after that. And they do offer some scholarships, partial scholarships. They don't offer full scholarships. And they're at $2.4 million a year to run that facility. And that facility is in the middle of an industrial complex and nowhere near homes at all. So the question is, we kept saying, let's figure out what kind of programs we're going to have before we can say what it's going to cost us. So what is it going to cost us annually to run this? And from where are we going to find those funds? They're only going to pay for 50% of it, the county. So let's say it's 2.4, then we'd still need to come up with the 1.2 million per year. If it was 3.5 million, then we still need to come up with a 1.7, 75, I guess. So where are we going to get those funds to actually run the programs?
It remains a great question that we have to have answers to before we fully proceed. Both examples you cite are both nonprofits, not run by cities. We have some capacity to run programming in-house and have a good sense of how much we recover on some of our youth programming. We don't think that our costs would be of those same kind of magnitudes as those nonprofits. But one of the things we really need to do, and it was the same issue with the tech center, is until we know what the conceptual layout of the building is, to then program what fits in those spaces, to then cost out what does the program cost, how much can we recover through the charges. We don't have that sense even now with any of these potential facilities, but that is something that we absolutely have to have and do that full cost benefit analysis at some point. As soon as we have a firm site selected, and we have some money coming in from Measure X, I can certainly program the rest of that before we make any final decisions.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is, you know, with something that we need to take into consideration is the Central Boulevard site, which is adjacent to the Park and Ride. Glideways is working with where the Makoko line is to be able to run the glideways above the Makoko line, and I forget which railroad it is, but are very enthusiastic about it. So shouldn't we look at keeping that for parking? The 3.6 acres, especially if the Glideways program move forward. That's one area that I think I would take off completely because of the possibility of needing that area for parking for Glideways. Anyway, those are only clarifying that I wanted to bring up, and I'll wait for discussion on the rest.
Thank you. Are there any other clarifying questions?
I just have one last question. When it comes to transportation, how difficult is it to work with public transit agencies in Contra Costa County to adjust their routes? So like Freedom Kids, Liberty Kids, Heritage Kids could have buses that run kind of after school and go to that direction. Is that hard to work with them and adjust those routes?
That's something that we could certainly work with the regional transit provider, TriDelta. There is usually an annual process where they take requests for any new lines and service demands. But I believe there's, and I meant to check on this before tonight, didn't get to it, but I believe there are some close to most of these, if not all of these sites, there are some close transit lines that could be adapted slightly to accommodate, especially there's a great demand.
Yeah.
The youth center is going to bring lots of traffic every day of the week. That would be of high interest to the transit provider.
Okay.
Heritage, the line from Heritage and Adams goes up to Balfour and Brentwood Boulevard, I believe. And then there's a Brentwood Boulevard line that does a loop around at Balfour and heads back out to Oakley. So I did look that over. And then there's those are just two lines that would bring from those areas of town, from the north and from the west.
Awesome. Very good. Yeah, so we would definitely work with TriDelta and see how close we could get bus services to any of these sites.
Okay. Well, if that's
in fact, the mayor sits on TriDelta, right? So the mayor may have some pull.
Well, I will tell you that TriDelta is always focusing, and that's one of the conversations been recently had about being of more assistance and getting more federal and state assistance to help underserved young people as well and seniors. So all of these issues are right in the perfect timing as far as conversations with TriDelta. But if there are no more clarifying questions, we'll open public comments at this time. I'll turn to you, Margaret.
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I'll call upon your name if provided and mute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. For my timer screen. I have 2 speakers. The first is Carolina Villaseca, followed by Rod. Carolina, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My comment is not to show a preference for any of the 1 locations. I just want to make sure whatever location you pick gets zoned correctly so that we don't have a repeat of the pot farm fiasco where it came down to wordsmithing what the location was called. So whatever location you pick, which is, located so that kids can get to it, and you work with the bus lines to make sure that the kids can get to the center, that can all be worked out. But it has to be zoned right so that we don't have another occurrence like that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rod. Rod, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm just looking over, I was looking over the chart that Tim had put up, and it is unfortunate because the only site we seem to have that has an existing structure is the one down by the police station. And I think I kind of agree with Councilmember Rodriguez that that's maybe not the best place to put a thing like this, just because it is in the far southeast corner of the city, so it's away from everything. But I guess it does have the advantage of having a structure that you could modify. I do like the idea. I mean, in the ideal world, I think, just taking from the ideal, not considering budget for a minute, would be to construct a facility probably on one of the two city-owned sites that's currently a park, and especially the larger one, there's sufficient acres there, I think, that it could still be a park or have, a field, maybe a soccer field that you could use, and then you could have also a structure that could be for the other purposes of the youth center. I think that would be a really great usage of one of those pieces of land. And I was just quick adding, I think there's about $6 million of appraised value in successor agency properties that could be disposed of. I don't know if we can use that money or if we have to use that to pay back the state. So not a lot of, I don't have a lot of insight into this. I just wanted to say that probably the best way to do it without regard to budget is to build a new facility, build it someplace where there is an indoor and an outdoor usage, and make it a place that young people would want to be, and if you build a new building, then you don't have to worry about trying to shoehorn into the space or try to figure out what that space is good for. You could design a space that would do what you needed it to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional hands raised.
Okay, at this time, we'll close public comment, move into council discussion. Councilmember Mendoza.
I'll start. It's $14 million. I don't know where we would get the money, even if we got money from the county. It's a lot of money. We would probably be years and years and years and years out before we had enough money, and we want something sooner than later. I don't mind the location. I like the synergies with the police department. I think that many times people have an adverse relationship with police departments. I think this is a great way to build a relationship. We have a great police department. We see them out with kids all the time. I think this would be great for them. It's also near La Paloma. And I think being near La Paloma is a great benefit to that high school. I'm being selfish. I know it's going to be a countywide facility if we get Measure X, but I'm being a little selfish about the kids in need at La Paloma, which are the highest in need kids in our city. If we can take care of the bus situation, any location is going to be far for somebody. We were looking at the tech center. The kids on the other side, we're going to have to go really, really far, right? So there's no area that's going to be close to everyone, unfortunately. But I like it. It has high ceilings. I've already gotten feedback from residents that they're super excited. They want indoor basketball because they're sick of their kids playing in 100-degree weather outside basketball. I think that there's potential to kind of do a hybrid. If we need to make money to pay for it, you could probably host tournaments and make money along with the other programs that we give, that we have. So I think there's a way to make up some money if you're able to do that with the funds that you get. I don't know with the county if there's any restrictions on the money that you get and the usage, but that's the site I'm leaning towards. I like it near the police department. I like it near La Paloma. Let's figure out the transportation. It's ready to go. It's not $14 million. So if I had to choose one, and then we have to figure out where we're going to get the ongoing money.
Councilmember Meyer.
So I'm not going to lie, the idea of it being that far away is not like the perfect situation for me, but I walked into it and got pretty excited at the tour. I do think that it's a safe location. There's not going to be gang activity. There's not going to be a heck of a lot of fighting going on. If that's the case, use the fact that it's next to a police station to reassure parents their kids are going to be in a safe place. So that part is good. I did get excited about the fact that there is a substantial amount of outdoor space for example, a garden. One of the things that rated highest in our survey is cooking classes. And for me, the idea of an agricultural area that has an outdoor farming or, garden that you can then in turn use for cooking classes, I think that's a fantastic usage. There was an area in the back that could be used for hanging out. It's not enough for a basketball court in the back, but there's certainly enough for visiting. There's cornhole. There's a whole side area that would be great for a dog run. No, I'm just kidding. Raised planter boxes, we discussed that. It has the potential too for the rock climbing wall. And if you remember the survey, the rock climbing wall was the highest rated activity that all the kids said they really wanted. And we were not able to give that to them in the past. So I don't think it's 100% ideal. I think it's the best we can get right now for the timing and the money and being able to offer some of the programs that the kids and their parents said they wanted the most. So I do think we should definitely consider it.
Councilmember Barrera?
I brought this when we first started talking about this. I brought this up, and it was shot down as an area not to even be considered. And I did get excited about it when I walked in there. The high ceilings, and just like Councilmember Meyer said, the rock wall, I could just envision that there. When you walk through the double glass doors, there's an area that is large enough that could actually support a cooking area, which actually was very high on the list of things that parents and kids wanted in there. I think there was even an exhaust already into that area. There was lots of large offices could be used for computer labs or for homework help, tutoring, or other types of classes. And its proximity to La Paloma is fantastic. It was only from Edna Hill, it was 0.9 miles from Edna Hill to, it was only 0.9 miles and from Edna Hill to that. So the walking isn't that bad. It's straight down Guerin Parkway from the school. So that's one school, but it's centrally located for Byron and Discovery Bay and Knightson, and so right around in those areas, and even the lakes, which is away from, it's Discovery Bay, but it's away from Discovery Bay. And then there, we even have rural all the way out Marsh Creek Road. So this, while it may not be centrally located in Brentwood, if we're getting funding from the county, it's got to serve the county, not just Brentwood. If Pittsburgh has one, my understanding is that Antioch has a youth center. Originally, when Measure X funding came up, there was a group that wanted to, they were starting a nonprofit to create their own East County Youth Center. And that's how this was proposed, was this group was trying to get the funding to do their own youth center. But since it's opened up for any city to propose a youth center, I think we have a great opportunity. And Councilmember Meyer is right. When the driveway going into the police station, into the back parking of the police station, there was this huge dirt area that would be great for gardening. And then there was also another area behind the building that also had some dirt areas that could be used for raised planters. Giant chess and checker game in that back cement area, along with the cornhole and some areas for kids to sit out. Bocce ball could be done. There was a very long kind of runway, the dog run area, as Councilmember Meyer had said, could be a great place to do bocce ball. So that allows for some outdoor activities in addition to the things that were inside. And I remember as a youth, when Santa Clara opened up their first youth center, that was where I spent every single day during the summer, and we were there after school a lot too. And back then, I mean, you could walk with no problems. I mean, it was several miles for me to walk there, and I was walking all the time. But it's not that same type of thing. So, you know, parents aren't going to let their kids walk that distance as much anymore. But if we can get buses to go out there, and I know PAL used to have vans, very large vans that they would transport kids from one school site to another. I don't know if we could utilize those at all. But yeah, I think this is a great location, and maybe we could work with both the school districts, because this will benefit their students, to donate a portion of, or all of their portion of that to the youth center, and as part of the successor agency, so that we could use or reduce the amount that it'll cost us for that. So yeah, I love the CD site.
Yeah. Oh man. So I also walked the building and went to the building. I've been there. This is probably my second time. It's been a while since the last time. And to be honest, I didn't get the same feeling of a youth center. If anything, I got a feeling of more of a sports complex kind of a feeling, where you could have soccer, hockey, basketball. I don't know if hockey, soccer, and boxing. I don't know if basketball would be sufficient, just because how low those beams are. Obviously, I'm not an expert, and it's something to look at. And walking in there, the rooms are very small to really do some of the stuff that was asked. For example, tutorial, some mental health services, having an area where the kids could hang out. Just didn't feel a youth center kind of a vibe. Been in hundreds of youth centers all through the state of California, but not only at a national level, and working with kids for as long as I have. I did see it being a good smaller sports complex where it could be indoor soccer, like I said, and hockey and boxing, and possibly a basketball courts. I'm not sure. I thought the parking is terrible in front. There's not a lot of parking currently. I think there's 16 slots of parking stalls for people. Obviously, I know the city manager has mentioned to look at that. I think also going in the back, I don't know if I remember seeing any dirt. I don't know if it was paved already, but also there's homes within, I don't know, 10, 15 feet from where that garden would be. So I don't know how the residents would feel, especially with the 2-story homes. I don't know how they would feel about that garden being there, but obviously that's a possibility. I just didn't have the same feeling. I think the location is terrible. I think that's out of the town. It's away from our community, where it'd be really hard for me to see a community really embracing this youth center when it's so far from the community itself. I think it'd be very difficult. I know the expense of doing a new center is very expensive. I think the last time that we received calls, we had people stating that why would we want them to have the tech center or any existing building if if we're going to give our kids anything, it should be something brand new, right? It should be something that we build. I think I remember hearing some callers call and state that. And now we're in this discussion where, it's not as easy as said, right? But I know that was some of the stuff that was said at that time. I know that the county is going to look at possibly areas where the youth center would be. I think it's great that Discovery Bay, the lakes, and Byron and all those other communities. But I also know that they would expect Oakley and other communities like possibly Antioch to also participate in this community center. And if they're looking for something that's existing and fast to put together, and I hate to continue to go, but I don't know how the tech center didn't fall into all these categories that we're talking about and looking for. When we say schools, and I know obviously we're moving in another direction, but how much better was the tech center when it came to schools. You had 4 or 5 different schools within very close radius. So to me, I just didn't feel that. I feel that, like I said, in receiving some phone calls, maybe we need to look at Sycamore. I think also in the past, we've also had council members that have mentioned Sycamore as a possibility to build a new community center there. I don't know if it's a community center, a youth center. Obviously, it has to be a youth center if we're going to use county money. I just feel like we had a great opportunity. We're going to spend a lot more money on something that really is not as beneficial as our first location that we had talked about and that we've invested in. So that's my point of view. I think that the CD is a great, smaller kind of a sports complex, but as a youth center and having that kind of vibe and energy, and as long as I've been working with kids, I really don't know. I don't see that really happening. But like a sports complex, I think it'd be good for those other areas. Yeah. Okay.
Quick question, Tim. When it comes to him not feeling comfortable, we can reconfigure everything. It doesn't have to be exactly like, just like we were going to we looked at reconfiguring the tech center. We could reconfigure this one, right, to make it the right feel and everything, right? So it doesn't have to stay like it is.
Yeah, that would be something that we would need to enlist the architect to come in and look at what walls could be moved, what our structure.
Okay. So we could have bigger rooms and like just configure it to what, I mean, I'm assuming if this were to move forward, we'd have like some kind of ad hoc and the kids would come in and they'd help reconfigure it and residents and stuff like that. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Some opportunities for reconfiguring things, and there are going to be some limitations based on the age of the building or the current configuration, but yeah, there should be some opportunities.
I just want to make sure we could move walls. Thank you.
One of the things that a couple of council members have brought up is the fact that this is something that can happen immediately. These funds are, that is the crux of this conversation, really, is the immediacy of these Measure X funds. Right now, having listened to Carrie, who is so fabulous in watching over the funds in a fiduciary manner, I know that there are going to be some potential changes in the future, that the city isn't limited to the current general fund budget that we have now. We have put many years of planning and work. This council has put a lot of effort in future revenue sources for our community as far as jobs are concerned. And so the limitation of our current budget isn't going to be limited always to this budget. We are going to see business growth, tax increment growth. We're going to see our budget growing. And at that time, a larger budget potentially can allow us to make a more ideal youth center in the future. I agree. I've spent a good bit of time in this facility. Just recently, the community chest spent a couple days there, and got to look at it again. And it does have some challenges. It's got some problems. It's if I had an ideal youth center, frankly, that would not be the ideal youth center that I would choose. But we have young people that, frankly, our young people are really struggling right now. Almost weekly, I'm talking to families that are talking about the difficulty that the last 2 years has been on their family, on their kids, on the mental condition of their kids, the emotional condition of their kids, and their whole family. And I personally feel like we are desperate to do something positive for our young people. We do owe them our best effort. And although this might not be ideal, in my opinion, right now, it's the ideal opportunity that we have right now, in my opinion. And I think that with the possibility and the probability of a future expansion, maybe in a different location, and a reuse of this facility at that point, I think that we really need to try to take advantage of these Measure X funds, knowing that this may not be the permanent forever youth center, but it can be potentially one that is put together very quickly and have a very positive dynamic effect on our young people. And I don't know the answer to this, so anyone on council, please let me know, or staff. Do we know how many young people that go to La Paloma come from out of the Brentwood area? Aren't there students that come in from other areas, or is that not the case?
It's in high school districts, so it is anybody that's within Oakley, Bethel Island, Brentwood, Discovery Bay, Nyson, all of those areas are served, and the Marsh Creek corridor. So yes, it's the whole 350 square miles that Liberty Union High School District encompasses.
I think that is a very leverageable piece of information when it comes to talking to the Board of Supervisors, the county, and Measure X funds, that this absolutely is a location that would service the target demographic that these funds are aimed at. So that's, again, that's how I feel about this. I understand it's not perfect, but it can make a significant, I think, measurable difference in the lives of our young people and in their families.
Yeah. And I think that if I had my choice and I had $14 million in here, it wouldn't be it. But I don't have $14 million out of my budget. So I know you're disappointed, Vice Mayor, that we're talking about the CD, Vice Mayor Rodriguez, but it's not because we don't want any other location. It's that I don't think we have $14 million in the budget, as we saw in the financial summary today. I mean, we don't have it. So I would rather offer something than nothing to the youth in our area. So, I mean, I'm feeling bad because I know you look disappointed, and this was not that intent. And I hope you know that if we had the money, we would build something new, without a doubt.
Well, I'll make a motion to move forward with the CD building. That's a use.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, I think the Vice Mayor was saying something. He was muted, though.
Oh.
Thank you, Councilmember Meyer. Thank you very much. No, Councilmember Mendoza, I appreciate your words and what you say. I guess it's not so much the, I guess it is the location. I think we had an opportunity with the wonderful location that had all the amenities that were needed for this to be successful, and being in the location that would have been very impactful to our community, right? And
well,
obviously,
yeah, well, wonderful.
Obviously, there's reasons why it's not happening, which I totally respect. So I think my disappointment is that we did have, and actually, it would have been cheaper than all these projects, right? That location would have been probably cheaper and larger than any of the other locations. But I totally understand it didn't go through, but I guess that's my disappointment. At the same time, though, I do remember, us having discussions here as a council that possibly Sycamore would be an option in regards to having a youth center, but also hearing from certain residents, right, stating that why would we want to put our youth in facilities that are already used? We should put something new, put something.
And I would do that if we had the money. I agree with you.
So my thing is, there's a variety of disappointments. I just don't feel, I understand La Paloma's there. And believe me, I've worked at La Paloma for many years. I know a lot of people at La Paloma, but you also got to provide a service that's going to attract and want students to be consistent and be part of your youth center. So I don't know if this can do that. I hope it does, because like I've told the city manager in the past, I'm just happy that we're even having a discussion about a youth center, because obviously this hasn't happened in the past. So it's nice that we're doing this. So if we get one on the tip of Oakley or Brentwood, whatever it is, I'm okay with that. I think it could have been done a little bit better.
Yeah. And I hope you also understand that my job is an alcohol beverage, and I have a moral responsibility to follow California state laws regarding liquor licenses youth centers, hospitals, churches, and so on, it doesn't meet the criteria for the California state law. So I couldn't vote for it ever. There was no way. It's not a wonderful location because it would be breaking the reason why we made the law in California to keep those things away from liquor stores. So I wouldn't be able to vote for it. So I just want you to know that, like, it's.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Councilmember, but I also know that in talking with Damian and Tim, that we weren't doing anything that was breaking the law in regards to a youth center being placed in that area. So it's something we've moved on.
That's fine, yeah.
We've moved on, but yeah.
I beg to differ, but that's
okay.
Okay.
My little disappointment, though. That's where my disappointment's at.
Okay, so
I would say I completely agree with what the mayor said in that it's not the ideal location. If we can afford to do it, another version of this, a better version of this later, then we should by all means do this. But I do think that this Measure X funding is a kind of a once in a lifetime thing. If we don't take advantage of it, then we're going to regret it later, because any other decision we make down the road is going to be that much further down the road. And as the mayor said, our kids are suffering now. So for it to be the quickest, the most feasible option right now with the Measure X funding, and it does offer some things that the tech center didn't. I don't think we need to get in that discussion again, but I feel like this is, again, it's not my favorite either. I would like to see from the ground up. I think it would be fantastic, but right now this is what we can do. And I think we're kind of leaning towards doing that. I mean, it feels like it's the right move for the Brentwood community. And I think it's something that they could get excited about and stand behind and want to be involved with and want to have some say and, have stakeholder groups and whatever. I think there would be a lot of interest in being involved and raising that spirit of a lot of people who are feeling down right now. I think it would be a great way to bring the community into a project and have them feel like they matter and have them feel like they have a say. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor and a second. So at this time, I'll ask Margaret to do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Can I just ask really quick? Sorry, I'm sorry. Mayor, could you guys, what the motion was, please? I'm sorry. I know it was said. I didn't hear it. Can you do the motion again?
Councilman.
To accept, or it was to consider, or was to move forward with the CD building as a future site of the youth center.
And that's conditional upon Measure X or regardless of Measure X?
Conditional on Measure X.
And is there a vacant land site that would be maybe the next best place if we do decide to move forward with anything new, if we get a bond, et cetera? Staff report mentioned that we could pursue a bond, and I didn't get a chance to talk about that earlier, but could pursue a bond if the Measure X doesn't come forward on the CD building. Is that of interest as well?
I think that would have to determine on what the cost of that bond would be, because you add that on to the amount of money, the 1.2 or up to 1.75 in the annual funds just to run the programs out of our pocket. Our 50% are those amounts. Having to actually pay on a bond, it just may make it so that we can't do it at all.
Yeah, no, great point. We need to come back with more information for sure.
So is her motion still?
No, my motion does not include another site.
Perfect.
Yeah, so, and I still second the CD building with Measure X funding.
So if we don't get Measure X funding, Tim, then nothing moves forward now, right?
Then at that point, I'll come back to the council to see what kind of financing options for one of the vacant sites, if the council still wants to pursue a youth center, or if there's more.
But right now, the motion is just to, if we get the Measure X money, to support a youth center, but it would, the location that we're going to look at is at the CD. So basically do the same process we've done at the tech center. That's what we're making a motion for.
At this point would be to pursue the Measure X funds on the former CD building. And then there's going to be other decision points the council will have to weigh in with more information we'll come back with.
Yeah.
So I think, did I say yes to the roll call? I think I did. So yes.
So Margaret, if you could do a roll call vote.
I'll just start from the beginning. Councilmember Mendoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Rary,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez,
Aye.
Mayor Bryant.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay. Moving on to item E3, pertains to the City Council assignments for 2022, and City Manager will now present on this item. Tim?
Good evening again. Let me pull that up. Let's see. So this is an opportunity again for the council to relook at all of the current committee assignments, whether they're yours or those from regional bodies, and make any appointments or changes as desired. So in the staff report, we outline, based on movement from the prior Youth Center feasibility study committee that was focused on the tech center solely, we're recommending disbanding that. And then also with the great progress the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District has made in the potential consolidation efforts, that would fully expect to materialize once they work through some kinks and then get back to LAFCO probably in the next few months, that would also alleviate any issues with needing to have that committee. And then also recognize that we have added, based on prior council action, the public financing authorities for the enhanced infrastructure financing districts. And by the way, those committee appointments will be coming up at your next council meeting to interview those potential candidates. And so reflect all that in the staff report. And then for where we have current vacancies, oh, sorry, one more. We had recommended, it came out of the strategic plan workshop, recommendation to create a State Route 4 noise committee to assess all of the regional efforts to reduce some of that noise impact to those residents. So a vacancy there, and we need potentially 2 appointments. And then we have with the John Marsh Historic Trust, this was also requested at the strategic plan workshop, to have a city council liaison. And again, so one vacancy there. I suppose if you elected, you could create an alternate as well if you desired. And I believe those are the only other vacancies at this point. So open to any questions, and then we'll leave it to you to work through what you'd like to do with those committees assignments.
Councilmember Mendoza.
I thought we were going to have a Dolphin Park ad hoc.
Was that with the strategic plan workshop?
No, that was just when we talked about Dolphin Park. We put it on hold and we're going to do an ad hoc and come back and do it. And I just saw an email today from Bruce. I think April is when they're thinking.
Yeah, we have a Parks and Recreation Commission ad hoc that's working on it now. I don't remember a city council one, but that.
Can we have a liaison from city council on that, or no?
Lean on Damien for that one. It's not on this agenda, but could certainly come back if that's an opportunity to consider.
I think it would be better to come back on that one because it wasn't on the agenda, but I think that's an easy one to bring back. If I could just add one thing to the city manager staff report, in making any motions on this, if you could also include in your motion the descriptions that are contained in the staff report, that's in the recommendation of the staff report itself. In there, there's descriptions of different committees, but staff just wants to make sure that we have those correctly stated on what the committees will be doing. Thank you.
Councilmember Meyer.
When we're doing our motion, it would be nice to have that up on the screen so we can make sure we're repeating the language. My question is, if we can get clarification for policy around if any of these rotate automatically, if they are, I mean, I understand like some of the more complicated committees really do better when they've got a multiple year term, if you will. But I'm curious about whether any of this is actual policy, or can we request changes outside of that anyway?
I'm sorry, that was for me, wasn't it? Would you mind asking that again?
It's okay.
I can jump in if you'd like. I wasn't sure who it was for, and
it doesn't really matter. Anyone.
I believe that, except for the appointments from the other agencies like the mayor's conference, And then I believe some of the bodies that Mayor Bryant is on, I believe any of the other, especially those that the city council creates, it's up to you to set membership limits and when you want to switch off. I'm not aware of any policy that says someone has to be on for a certain period of time. I think there are some benefits to that as you get some continuity and you get some experience. But I believe at the last time you considered this, there was some discussion on making sure there was more rotation. So other members could get experiences on the bodies, but there's no rules in there in your rules of procedure that I'm aware of that would limit other than those that I referenced earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Meyer had wanted to be on the Ag Enterprise. I'd be willing to step off of the Ag Enterprise if she was still interested in that.
The response on her face says that she is.
That's a big yes.
Not that I want to give it up, but I'm looking at this, and between these two and the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District and the Highway 4 Noise Study ad hoc, that actually, I thought we had determined who was going to be on that during that meeting. Wasn't it you, Councilmember Meyer, and myself?
I believe we talked about that, but I didn't see it on paper, so I was doubting that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't in an agenda to make it formal if there was a discussion, so sorry if that wasn't noted, but if the intention was, but that could certainly be done tonight.
And the John Marsh Historic Trust has asked that I be their liaison.
Do we need a nomination for you to do that?
I mean, if somebody else wants to do it, I mean, that's...
No, you should do it. I also wondered about, for the mayor's conference, can we, under appointment, and I guess we would have, it doesn't have an alternative on there. Where is that? There it is. It says Bryant, but it does not have alternative. And there are a couple of us, or a few of us, I guess, that attend this meeting anyway. As long as it's virtual, it's a little hard to be able to say, I really don't want to hear from Brentwood, I'd be happy to represent. If you're in person, it's a little bit easier. But can we have some language in this document to say that if the mayor is not available, that we kind of go down a line and decide who could represent, so that we've always got some representation there, since we typically are there?
Currently, that process is in place. I think in the last, well, it usually is the mayor. If the mayor can't be there, the vice mayor, and then after that, any council person that would be available and have interest. Staff contacts. I know that there was a drop in communication for the one. Since I've been mayor, I've only missed two. One was covered by the vice mayor, and the other one was not. But I know that there's been some statements and concerns in the community, and I just want you to know, as vice mayor and even as a council person, when they were having them in person, and I know Council Member Rary also spent a significant time going when we had these in person. When they do open up, hopefully at some point soon, council members are able to be there in person. And so this whole, Zoom environment has caused some frustration for everybody. But
and frankly, the way they format it, it's almost like a webinar. It's not interactive enough to know who's there in the audience. So it's a little bit of a concern with that. And those concerns won't be as significant once it's back in person. I just wondered if it needed to be something that was noted here, since it hasn't been.
Yes, I think outside of one incident, the process that you're recommending already is exactly what we do. And we'll make sure that it happens.
Bryant #alternate Rodriguez.
Well, but that's not, because I know that as the mayor said, when Mayor Taylor wasn't able to attend, Vice Mayor Bryant did. and when he wasn't able, then the mayor would reach out to one of the other council members, generally the senior council member, but if that person doesn't attend them, then the whoever is going to be attending it. And because I know I've sat in as a representative for Brentwood.
Yeah, I can confirm. Margaret just sent me the bylaws from the mayor's conference, and it says when a mayor is unable to attend a meeting, the mayor shall designate another member of the city's legislative body to attend and vote at the meeting as the mayor's representative. So that is a process we generally followed and can follow more consistently. And that misunderstanding was on my part, where we had a drop in representative. So we'll make sure that doesn't occur again.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. This is how we fix these things, right?
Absolutely.
That's why we're here.
Are there any other changes that any of the council members would like to make from what they're already doing currently?
Mr. Mayor, before there's much more discussion on this, I don't believe you've opened it up for public comment, but maybe I missed that.
Thank you. I will. I will at this time open public comment and turn it to you, Margaret.
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted when the timer has expired. And I'm going to go ahead and share my timer. I have one person with their hand raised, Carolina Velaseca. I'll call on her now. Carolina, go ahead.
My only comment is that you guys do a great job of representing Brentwood, so I'm very happy to see that you're enthusiastically signing up to represent. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Do I have no additional hands raised?
At this time, I will close public comment and we'll continue with council discussion.
Can we just make a motion to add Councilmember Rary and Councilmember Meyer to the State Route 4 Noise Committee, switch Councilmember Rary to Councilmember Meyer for the, where's the agricultural one? And find the agricultural one.
Ag Enterprise, the very first one.
Oh, okay.
No, my first one is, it's on top. The agricultural enterprise, switch Councilmember Rary to Councilmember Meyer. And then, was there one more?
Yeah, the John Marsh.
And then Councilmember Karen Rary will be the John Marsh Historic Trust City Council Liaison.
And I would second that, if that's okay with everyone. I think that's caught everything.
And if I could just clarify with the maker of the motion, does that include the committee descriptions that were referenced in the staff report?
Your microphone is working.
I do know. I wasn't sure. Councilmember Mendoza's microphone is on mute. I don't know if she's reading the descriptions or if she was agreeing with.
Sorry, I didn't mean. No, I read the descriptions. Did you hear when I read the descriptions or no?
No.
Sorry. The agricultural enterprise will now be Councilmember Meyer.
Oh no, exactly. But were the descriptions that are written there, are those acceptable to the maker of the motion?
Yes,
okay.
The descriptions are acceptable.
Enter the second.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Margaret, could I get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay, we'll move on to item E4, and that is pertaining to City Council consideration of support for a statewide initiative related to land use, and Alexis Morris will present on the item. Alexis?
Good evening again, Honorable Mayor and City Council. This item was requested at the December 21st City Council meeting. The council directed staff to bring back a resolution of support for the Brand Huang Mendoza Tripartisan Land Use Initiative, which is also known as the Our Neighborhood Voices Initiative. The California legislature has proposed, passed, and presented to the governor for signature a number of bills that usurp the authority of local jurisdictions to determine for themselves the land use policies and practices that best suit each city and its residents, and we discussed one earlier this evening. The initiative would add new provisions to the California Constitution that would, with some exceptions, make zoning and land use community affairs and not statewide concerns of interest. So with that, staff is recommending that the council adopt the resolution expressing support for the Brand Huang Tripartisan Land Use Initiative, or the Our Neighborhood Voices Initiative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any clarifying questions of staff? Seeing none.
I have a question, Mayor. Do we know how many cities are in support of this initiative?
Yeah, the last time I checked, it's 116 cities in down south. What's it called? The Cal Cities group down south. They all voted to support it as an agency. So I think it's 11 counties, and then there's another 35 cities throughout.
So 116 cities?
That's one group of cities that together they endorsed it all together down south. Like the mayors all go and they all get together and they voted on it, and it won 32-12. So that group of cities voted together to do it. And then we have about 35 cities. There's cities we don't know, like no one's telling us that they're passing the resolution. So unless someone calls and tells us, we won't know.
So is the California League of Cities supporting it?
No, they took no position.
And why is that? Does anybody know?
Because they're okay with these bills coming down from Sacramento, and there's actually more coming next year.
Councilmember Mendoza, did you mention that there was another city that in the Bay Area that signed on support recently?
Pleasanton just did too. They asked me to attend their meeting and speak on behalf of the initiative. So they passed it they support it, and they want voters to decide who should manage. That's the way they worded it. They worded it a little bit different than just a plain resolution. They said the voters should decide who should be managing their land use.
Okay. Are there any further questions, staff? Okay. Then at this time, we'll open public comment and I'll turn to you, Margaret.
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I will call your name if provided and then mute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I'm going to share my screen. I have 2 hands raised. I'll call on Rod, followed by Carolina Villaseca. Rod, go ahead.
Thank you, Margaret. Yeah, I just want to say very quickly that I personally support the city in passing this resolution. And on social media, this topic has received a lot of conversation. And I do believe that a sizable majority of the people commenting on those places also would support this resolution. Nobody really there are a few people that support the law, but mostly the city of Brentwood is united behind you in this. So please do pass the resolution, and thank you so much for considering it.
The next speaker is Carolina Villaseca. Carolina, go ahead.
Good evening. I'd like to piggyback off what Rod said. It's not just people in Brentwood who support this resolution, but in neighboring suburbs. once people are finding out what these two bills could potentially do to our neighborhoods, they are a little shocked that they were signed into law, especially since they don't do anything that they were presented for everyone to vote on to do. And as Jovita has mentioned, that other cities around up and down California are now starting to dig into the details like we are, and they're also a little shocked at what it does and what it doesn't do, and what the combo deal gives you and doesn't give you. And I strongly urge City Council to pass this resolution so that we can start overturning this colossal mistake. Thank you.
I have no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Okay, at this time then, we will close public comments and move into council discussion.
I just want to say thank you. Oh, go ahead then. I was just saying thank you for bringing it up for consideration. I do appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone in Brentwood. I've gotten about 500 signatures at the farmers market. And I cannot tell you how touched I am by everyone that comes there. And they say, I saw you on social media. I know you're here. They drove just there to sign it. So I thank you to every single resident. It means a lot to me that you're supporting me. So that's it.
Councilmember Meyer.
Just a reminder of the discussion we had a couple of items ago about SB9 and how concerned we are all are about the controls coming down from the state when it comes to our housing and land use, and how much work is going into the fact that we're trying to protect our city, and we're again reaching out to people across the state and connecting with our cohorts in other areas, and we're digging in the weeds trying to find ways to protect our city. This is potentially how this is working. This is why the initiative was even well, a straw on the camel's back. But one of the reasons that the initiative has been put forward is because people are understanding that local control is being taken away. SB9 was just a prime example of that. So I just want anybody who's unsure to think about the discussion we just had a few items ago, and how intensely we were all focused on trying to do everything we can to maintain local control and do what we know is best for the residents here and what the residents have elected us to do.
Councilmember Rary?
I wholeheartely agree with what both of them had said. I would like to make a motion if as detailed in the staff report, adopt a resolution expressing support for the Brand Hung Mendoza Tripartisan Land Use Initiative.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Margaret, roll call vote.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
I was wondering if Councilmember Mendoza was going to support this. She was right on the fence, I could tell.
Oh, like this is the only one giving me anxiety. It's so weird. And thank you all for the support, and hopefully we can get control back to our cities and manage our zoning the way our residents want us to. So thank you.
We'll move into item E5.
Mayor, before we start E5, I have a potential conflict of interest as my employer is one of the co-authors of ACA 7. And as I don't want any appearance of conflict, I'm going to not participate in this portion, in this item.
Okay, thank you. So then at this time, with the recusal of Councilmember Meyer, we'll open item E5. It pertains to City Council consideration of support for a state constitutional amendment related to land use. And Alexis Morris will now present on the item. Alexis.
Thank you again. This item was also requested by Council at the December 21st Council meeting to come back with a resolution of support for the Assembly Constitutional Amendment 7, or ACA 7. Assembly Member Murat Suchi and Senator Glazer introduced ACA 7 in the State Assembly in March of 2021. The proposal would amend the state constitution to restore local government control over land use decisions by providing that, with certain exceptions, local land use decisions would prevail over conflicting state statutes. If passed by the legislature, ACA 7 would put this proposed constitutional amendment on the next ballot for a decision by the voters. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt the resolution expressing support for ACA 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Okay, seeing there are no questions of staff, we'll open public comments. Margaret?
I received 0 written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I have one speaker with their hand raised. Let me go ahead and share my timer screen. I'll call on Rod. Rod, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'll be very brief again because I'm just repeating what I said for the last measure. Please pass this resolution. The city of Brentwood, I believe, is behind you. Certainly all the homeowners in Brentwood are behind you. And thank you so much for considering it. And I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Okay, at this time, we'll close public comment, move into council discussion.
My only comment is that this ACA 7 is actually the backbone of our bill. Bill Brent took that bill, took it to Legislative Council, so I totally support it because it's basically the same thing. So I think it's great.
One of the things I've learned is that it has it's slowed down a bit in the conversation. If our community could get in touch with their state representatives regarding this in support of it, it would be greatly helpful. You know, again, everything that the previous item we voted on, we just have to fight for local control. Every time there's a session at the state level, they continue to chip away at local control, and it's in larger and larger steps every time they do. And so we absolutely have to do everything we can to keep it, because eventually, if this trend continues, we will have no say in what happens in our communities. So we have to stop this at every turn possible. That's really all I have to say. Do we have a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion. As detailed in the staff report, adopt a resolution expressing support for Assembly Constitution Amendment 7.
And I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Margaret, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries with Councilmember Meyer recused.
Okay, thank you. If we could have Councilmember Meyer rejoin us now. If there's a way to contact her. Everyone's microphones are muted. I hopefully there she is. I'm sorry. My screen switched to the side. I didn't see it. Great. Okay, so then now we will move on to item F1, and that is future agenda item request. Is there anyone that has a new future agenda item request tonight, Council?
Would we need to ask for a future agenda item for the architect for the CD building? Or is that into the 50,000?
Yes and yes. So we think it could come under the 50,000. So I do have authority for that, and we could find some budget for that. I would probably recommend holding off on doing that until we get to understand the process the county is going to entertain. And as soon as we have that secured, I'd love to quickly go get somebody under contract and get that work started.
Okay, all right, then I'll hold off.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Well, seeing none, we move on to the final item, adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. A roll call vote.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you, everyone.